Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for July 19th, 2022. Item number 1, if we could call the roll, please.
Member Brenning. Councilmember Lehman. Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Contreras. Mayor Mars.
Here, thank you very much. Now, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections, Mr. Reynolds?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I have 2 things to discuss. First, on the consent agenda, item 4B5, which is the block party. That date change, there'll be a date change on that from 5 August to 13 August, please. So you'll be making the decision for 13 August, not 5 August. And on the regular agenda, we'll be withdrawing item 10B2, the annexation. It appears that we did not properly notice some of the property owners, and we want to make sure that we do that, so that will come back to you at a later date.
So the Jackson Township annexation will be removed from tonight's agenda.
That's correct.
Councilor Whiting.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask that we move item 10A2 to the position we'll call 6A. Can that be before the public hearings?
Can that be before public hearings? Yeah.
And with that, I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
I have a motion and a second to approve the modified consent agenda, which includes a clarification on the block party, the elimination of the township annexation discussion, and the moving of 10A2. Councilor Lehman.
I'm checking on the actual resolution on that consent item.
For item 4B5.
Yeah, it looks like the resolution has the 5th also. All right, I'll move it from consent.
I have a motion.
I'll accept that modification if you want to pull it.
It's a consent item, I'll just take it off under consent business
Oh, okay, yep.
So we'll take that off consent.
when we get there.
All right. So,
The date's wrong.
I know, we just corrected the date.
It's wrong on the memo too, that's okay? As long as we
Well, that's what I'm
recognize it now?
saying, is that we're modifying that agenda item. The date has changed from 5 August to 13 August.
It's gonna go,
So the action you'll be taking will be on 13 August, not 5 August.
so we're gonna go from a Friday to the following Saturday. Saturday 13th.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
so for the agenda, with a couple modifications, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The modified agenda's been approved. Item 4, consent business, which does include 4B5, which updated from August 5th to August 13th. Are there any other changes, corrections, Mr. Reynolds?
No, sir.
Councilor Lehman.
Mayor, I'll move the consent agenda recognizing 4B5 is moving the date from August 5th to August 13th, 2022.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with a note added for the block party and the date moved. Really no further discussion. Before we vote on the modified consent agenda, we would read the modified consent agenda into the public record. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. These are the consent agenda items for 19 July of 2022. 4A1 approves the city council meeting minutes for 12 June of 2022. 4A2 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 087 approving a gambling permit for the Shakopee Lions located at Mallards at 180 Atwood Street. 4A3 approves a tobacco license for Dollar General located at 1260 4th East Avenue. 4A4 approves a temporary liquor license for Shakopee Tap 2022 Brewfest on 10 September of 2022. 4A5 approves wine 3.2 on sale and Sunday liquor license for Tokyo Sushi and Grill located at 8080 Old Carriage Court North. 4A6 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 101 amending the years of collection for Cherney's tax abatement. 4A7 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 100 amending the years of collection for KEB's tax abatement. 4A8 approves the purchase of the scheduled replacement Cisco network switches for $29,090.73 from Logis through CDWG. 4A9 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 099 changing the August 2nd meeting date to August 3rd of 2022. 4A10 approves the purchase of a Laserfish licensing and maintenance renewal contract from OPG3 for $30,444. 4B1 approves the closure of Lewis Street, alley, and parking lot for TAP 22 on September 10 of 2022. 4B2 approves a noise variance request for Canterbury Park for Twin Cities Summer Jam until 11 p.m. for July 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of 2022. 4B3 approves a 6 a.m. start on weekdays and 7 a.m. on weekends for Greystone construction of the Omri at Canterbury Southwest Development. 4B4 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 096, an application in the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development redevelopment program for the amphitheater project. 4B5 approves a temporary road closure of Holmes Street from 2nd Avenue to 1st Avenue on August 13th from noon to 11 p.m. and allows alcohol to be served in the street from Babe's Place and Manna Brewing. 4B6 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 102 for the final plat for Canterbury Southwest 3rd Edition. 4C1 adopts Resolution R 2022 TAC 097 applying to the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety, DWI Traffic Safety Officer Grant Program. 4C2 declares forfeited vehicles as surplus and authorizes their sale. 4C3 extends the School Resource Officer Agreement with the Shakopee School District. And 4C4 extends the Joint Powers Agreement with the Minnesota Financial Crimes Task Force.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reynolds. I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda has been read into the public record. There would be no further discussion. All those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to item number 5. Now I'd like to call on any resident citizen that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Joe Wandersee. My wife and I, Holly, live at 589 5th Avenue East here in Shakopee. I'm just going to say Shakopee is governed by 2 ordinances, 130.10, which prohibits explosive and aerial fireworks. The second is a noise ordinance, 130.45, which prohibits noise after 10 p.m. On July 4th, people in my neighborhood openly violated 130.10 by shooting off bottle rockets, mortars, and shells. I have pictures of these fireworks I can share with the City Council or the press if interested. The other thing I want to address with the City Council is these illegal fireworks under Shakopee ordinance were detonated when I called the police at 9:42 p.m. I have pictures of my call log if the City Council or press are interested. The fireworks continued after 10 p.m., which violated a second ordinance, 130.45. I called dispatch again at 10:16 to report a second violation. I have pictures on my cell phone of a call log if the City Council or press is interested. On the 6th of July, I called the Police Department to see if they took action on both violations. I get up at 4 a.m. every day of the week, every weekday, including July 5th. When I called the police station on July 6th, I wanted to find out what the response was to my 942 call on July 4th concerning unlawful detonation of illegal fireworks. I was told Officer O'Keefe responded. I was also told by the person I was talking to I should talk to a sergeant on duty or to Officer O'Keefe. I then got transferred to Officer O'Keefe's voicemail, and I never received a call back. After 5 days, I called back again, and I asked for a sergeant on duty. I left another voicemail and got a call back in about 10 minutes. On the 5th of July, I talked with the people who were responsible or who were detonating the aerial fireworks on my street. I was told the responding officer to my 942 call said it was a BS call and to keep them pointed straight up. When I told this to the sergeant, he said he found it was hard to believe. Officer O'Keefe finally called me back the following day, so 6 days later. He told the people detonating aerial fireworks, if you're lighting them, to be safe. The City Council, the Shakopee Police Department representative is stating that he told them it was permissible to violate the Shakopee Ordinance 13010 and detonating aerial fireworks. The second call I made on July 4th at 10:16 was to dispatch concerning the additional violation of Shakopee Ordinance 13045, which is a noise ordinance. Since the aerial fireworks continued well after 10 p.m., the person I talked to told me they had higher priority calls and they hung up on me. I have a picture of my call logs showing that I called them. On the 5th day, when I called and talked to the sergeant, he told me there was no record of my 1016 call that night. So my question tonight for the City Council is, are you instructing the police department to ignore the violations of these two ordinances on July 4th? I work for a living. Again, I get up at 4 o'clock every day, including July 5th. I'm sure there's many other residents who also had to get up that morning with no sleep. And I'd like to know what measures will be taken to ensure this doesn't happen again.
I appreciate your comments and your discussion and your documentation on this. Obviously, around the 4th of July, that does create some problems from time to time. So, Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Chief Tate, if you'd like to come and address the issue, please.
Mayor, members of council, July 4th, we had not one, not two, but 3 pages of fireworks complaints. You're not the only street this happens on. It happens on every street. We don't have a record of your second call. Dispatch is inundated with every city in the county with these types of calls on the 4th of July. It is one of our busiest nights. No, we cannot get tied up writing everybody violations for this. I went through and read what our officers did on those calls. Most of the time, if we actually got there and they were still being lit off, they were advised of the complaint and told to stop. Does that mean when we start going to the next complaint and turn the corner, they don't light them off again? That happens. But no, we cannot get tied up on the 4th of July with fireworks tickets and standing there and confiscating these. And in the overwhelming majority, I'd say about 70 to 80% of the time, they've been blown up before we even get there. So it's a frustrating night for everybody, but with the events that we have in town, the high traffic areas, Valley Fair, Canterbury, that weekend, every city's in the same boat with this type of stuff. I'm glad you actually went and talked to your neighbor. My neighbor was lighting them off at 12:30 in the morning, and I talked to him the next day.
It's been going on for years, and
I call every year,
Yeah.
and if nothing ever gets done, nothing's ever going to get solved. The officer went there at 9:55. They went way past 11.
Counselor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to answer one of your questions and set the record straight, no individual on this body can direct the police department to enforce or not enforce a city ordinance. We as a body can take that action, but we have not done that. We have not, as a body, directed our police department to not enforce an ordinance. Actually, it works the other way. They usually come to us and say, we have a proposal for a modification to an ordinance, and it takes our approval to change it. So, to answer your question, the answer is no. We have not directed our police department to not enforce a city ordinance. Okay?
So what measures can be taken to ensure that, I mean, I've lived in Shakopee for 23 years. I call every single year. I get up every single morning, like I said. You know, what can I do differently? 2 years ago when I called, they told me if I had a house number, it would be helpful. So I got out of bed, gave my house number. I gave my house number again on this one. You know,
Mayor, Council, Mr. Wandersee, it's one of those things that on that night, again, it is almost impossible to get there on time and see them actually. You still have to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
I've got
that
video
it's
on my
theirs.
phone.
Well, that's great. We'll be happy to sit down and talk to your neighbors. But again, we're not going to get tied up on the 4th of July. We're at minimums on the street with fireworks tickets. Usually, we gain compliance, as we do with any ordinance in our city. We get a lot further by asking people just to stop. And that was the case again on July 3rd and July 4th, so throughout the city.
I take a lot of calls as well as the mayor, and the police try to respond. By the time they get there, the event action is over, and then the cops leave, and then they do it again. They do it in my neighborhood.
I think every neighborhood.
Right, every neighborhood, and it is very frustrating. You'd wish that people would use more responsibility for others in this deal, but I agree with the chief that, you know, I don't know how, he said several pages of calls, and it's hard, and I hear you, because it's in my neighborhood too. I know families that have dogs that are scared of all that, and they leave town. I'm not sure where they go, because, you know, you go to another town and stuff, so.
In this case, I was told the officer did not tell them to stop, that he actually told them to keep them pointed straight up and to be safe. And the wind was blowing my way, so everything blew into my yard.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your concerns. We don't have an answer tonight in our citizen on items not on the agenda, but thank you for voicing your concerns. I do appreciate that. This is a time when a resident can come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome if there's another. Seeing none, we would move ahead then to number 6, business removed from consent, which there isn't any. And then we would move to our new 6A, which is really 10A2, is a presentation by Hockey Day Minnesota Exploratory Committee. And good evening and welcome.
Got my paperwork in a wrong order now. Thanks, Counselor White.
Thank you, and if you at times both going to speak, I respectively ask that you speak directly into the microphone.
Good evening, Mayor, honorable council people. My name is Matthew Underwood. I am a Shakopee alum, Shakopee High School coach, and part of this Hockey Day Minnesota Exploratory Committee, and we're here to present tonight.
Eric Radke, 1792 Switchgrass Court in Shakopee, and I am also a part of the Exploratory Committee to bring Hockey Day Minnesota to Shakopee. What we really wanted to discuss with you today is what we have going on, what we're looking to accomplish. We wanted to introduce our committee to you, tell you a little bit about, for those that may have not a great deal of familiarity with Hockey Day Minnesota as a concept, share with you about that, introduce some of our team to you that we've pulled together to potentially pull this off, and then talk about kind of where we are in the process and what the next steps are. So that's really what we've got loaded up for you today. So to start with, why don't we run to the next slide? Matthew, do you want to talk just a little bit about what Hockey Day Minnesota is?
Yeah, so Hockey Day Minnesota, like it says here, it was originated in 2007 by the Minnesota Wild to celebrate the game of hockey in the state of hockey of Minnesota. It's a partner with Bally Sports North, so it's televised. And it really brings each and every community that it goes to over the last 16 years together, and it provides an opportunity to highlight hockey and the community of Shakopee, which is just something that we're really looking forward to doing. Previous locations include Baudette, Hermantown, Moorhead, Minnetonka, Grand Rapids, Elk River, St. Paul, Duluth, Stillwater, St. Cloud, Bemidji, Minneapolis, and Mankato. This upcoming year will be White Bear Lake, and I think it'll be a great opportunity for the community of Shakopee to be part of that group. In 2022, Mankato drew nearly 25,000 fans, players, media, and community members to the 4-day event. And Mankato's local organizing committee gifted legacy awards to the host school, community, the youth hockey in Southwest Minnesota, and we hope to do that same thing for the community of Shakopee.
Before we move on to the next slide, just a little bit of color commentary on what you just saw on that previous slide. Just today, Minnesota Hockey, the Minnesota Wild put out a press release announcing the schedule for Hockey Day Minnesota in 2023. In there, the executive vice president and general manager said, "We're really excited to highlight the community of White Bear Lake." He didn't say anything about hockey. He just said, we're partnering with a community. That's the Bally Sports guy who is very obviously interested, and he said they're going to do 16 hours of broadcast live from White Bear Lake this year. The program continues year over year to build and grow. When you look at what the community of Mankato pulled off in 2022, they turned it into a big old thing with a village and multiple ice rinks, multiple teams from all over the state participating, events having to do with hockey, having not to do with hockey. And when I hear that quote from the general manager of Bally Sports, thinking about the future of what Hockey Day in Minnesota is going to be, his quote is, "This is a community event." So what we're really here to talk to you about is a concept that we're putting together that there's the name hockey in it, but it really should be, hockey is just as much a part of Minnesota culture. That's why we're the state of hockey. And so, we really have a vision to turn this into a community building event in partnership with all necessary stakeholders that would be involved in this. So there's that. We also wanted to put up here for you, I don't know, this is a little bit small typing, I did that. That was me. I'm the one that couldn't figure out how to format a slide that y'all could read. So if you can't read it, I apologize. But there's some really important things in here. What we're highlighting here is the Hockey Day Minnesota local organizing committee that we've pulled together. We are in the process of trying to get the Wild to pick us for a future bid. And when you look across this list of folks that are involved in this, you will see that the mayor's there. We've got the athletic director. We've got both varsity coaches. We've got CEOs. We've got presidents of organizations. We've got people who work in large corporations that have million-dollar payrolls to administer. And we've got folks that have lived in this community for years and years, folks that have sat on boards, that have evaluated budgets, that have been accountable to stakeholders time and time again. That's one thing that I think is very important to recognize when you think about what we're trying to pull together is I'm really proud of this team that is creating the foundation to try to pull this off. So that's a little bit about who we are as a team. Matthew, was there anything else about our team that you thought we really wanted to highlight?
I just wanted to highlight our commitment. There's 9 out of the 11 of the board here tonight, including the mayor as part of our board. And we have Eric Radke, and then there's several behind us that have come to show their support and show their commitment to the program. I think Eric said it best, which is we all we're all stakeholders in this community and want to see this event go off in Shakopee and really bring bring something to Shakopee that will really highlight how great this community is.
So that's our team. You can advance to the next slide. Really, the next steps, where we are in the process. We've had conversations with the Minnesota Wild in our pursuit of trying to win this bid. Our committee has invited the Wild and Bally Sports down to visit Shakopee. They really liked their time with us. When we visited and talked, they said, all right, great. Next step is we would like to have a site plan from you. And so at this point in time, that's our next step with the Minnesota Wild, is to come back to them with a site plan. We also need to have continued conversations with the Minnesota Wild all around the concept of us winning that bid and highlighting, are we going to be able to prove that we can raise the funds? All conversations that other communities have had to have with the Wild. We really want to win this. It's a great opportunity for Shakopee, and that's where we are in this process. The other thing that is very much on our radar is at the very beginning of this process, one of the first things that we really need to do is, if we want to make this a community successful event, we're bringing this to council. And we want to talk with you because you have constituencies that are very interested in seeing things done well in the community, done responsibly. And so to that extent, that's part of this next step and phase in the process. Additionally, we know there's a long list of folks that we need to introduce to it. It's important to know that we haven't won this bid yet. That's where the phase that we're in. And in order to get to that spot where we have a lot to do, where we have to go and answer a lot of questions about how exactly we're going to do this, we need to answer enough questions at this point to be able to get the Wild to say, okay, what's the next step? And so at this point, after having gone through that information, we're happy to stand for a few questions.
Questions of the committee, Councilor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have several questions. What have other communities done to entice the group to make their community hockey day?
Yeah, so I can just tell you what I've done. As I'm the chairman of our local organizing committee. A parent came to me and said, hey, this Hockey Day Minnesota thing sounds like something very interesting, and can maybe Shakopee do it? So I went on the website, went to the Minnesota Wild, and then got contact information from the Minnesota Wild, and then reached out to the Minnesota Wild directly. They have a director of public relations person that I've been talking to. And then from there, they have I can't think of the right terminology, but basically sheets of here's what you should do. So I just started going through that and doing checks on the list and saying who should be involved, like the athletic director, the mayor, other elected community members, varsity coaches, just to start pulling people in that could be part of it, including parents and other members of the community. So yeah, it's just been a communication back and forth with the Wild and Bally Sports North. We have invited Bill Reynolds to our meeting at one point in time. He did some very preliminary reach out to other cities to see how they involve themselves, but we're still very early on in that stage. So right now it's just a matter of knocking down the to-do list, which is right now presenting to you guys and looking for support.
So anecdotally, a few things that other communities have done, and there's a long list, right? You having this event have occurred since 2007, each community puts their own stamp on it. In Bemidji, they rolled up food trucks, lots and lots of food trucks, and they all camped out in and around there. And Bemidji was the coldest Hockey Day Minnesota on record, and these food trucks were trying to solve and figure out how to, take the throngs of people and give them a great experience. Stillwater, when they hosted it, they had it right down on the river. Really cool, neat event for them. In Mankato, they had a lot of other ancillary hockey rinks. In fact, our Pee Wee team was invited to go down and participate in a Hockey Day Minnesota in Mankato. So lots of options for ancillary events, as you might have seen in the very small font. We've got Stacy, who has volunteered to be our ancillary events committee chairperson. She is the president of the Shakopee Blue Line Club for the hockey team. She's very connected in the community and really looking forward to doing more than just hockey.
So if you could highlight some of those brainstorming ideas, what you maybe have thought of events that could go along with this. I know you're not putting anything in
Yeah.
stone, but.
And not trying to be coy or anything, there's a lot of ideas that we've talked about. They're in the idea phase, though, and so to speak about them here would make them more real than they probably are. So I'd feel a little bit, I want to pull my punches a little bit on that and kind of keep my powder dry, so to say, because when we actually know we want to try to do this, we would, do this particular ancillary event and additional things. I would rather bring those back to you and not use the power of suggestion at this moment to say.
No, I understand, I appreciate that, so
And
thank
I-
you.
And I would just add that I think in this group especially, I think you guys know how rich Shakopee is. So we have a lot to offer, and that's why it's in the ideas phase. So just because there's so much to give, so. Yeah.
Counselor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a couple questions, and as you were talking about your site plan, when you're talking about here with Shakopee, what are you thinking? Are you planning to use our facilities? What facilities? Yeah, I have a lot of them.
Yeah, great question. So I'll tell you a little bit of what we've done so far. We have taken the opportunity to look and think and discuss as a committee several locations around town. And in doing the due diligence for any location that we may want to do, we've sat down with the school superintendent and say, okay, how would you feel about us putting it on a school property? Like, what do you think about this idea? They said, oh, great, well, let's, here's this. And the kind of the punch mark on the conversation was, okay, well, how could we use the academies and, people in the business and marketing to do some internships that we could partner with there? And so I had the superintendent, just his idea factory started flowing, which is always great to see. We met with city administrator, Bill Reynolds around a city property. We've had the Minnesota Wild and Valley Sports out to visit our community twice to do what's called a site visit. We went out to the Joe at Topout Park and looked at that as an option, and considering that as an option. We also needed to talk with stakeholders involved with it, so we talked with the Shakopee Youth Baseball Association around, okay, have any concerns here? The athletic director for the school is on our committee, and so if baseball schedules would be any affected by that, so we kind of vetted out and talked through those options. Anywhere we put an ice rink that there's not already an ice rink, it's going to have consequences.
Correct.
It's just a matter of whether the juice is worth the squeeze.
Okay, may
More?
continue,
Yes.
yes. With that said, that was one of my worries of, you think about our park, the tear and the damages. Will there be damages? Obviously, we don't know until it's torn back, put back together. And then I'm guessing, our time, our staff time, like how much staff you need from us, what will you be needing? And I guess pretty much money, like I know you, are you going to be requesting money from the city? What are your requests? Will there be more requests from the city?
Yeah, do you want me to take those one at a time? Or?
Sorry, I know I should have done that.
All right, well,
Yeah.
let's start with the first one first. Anywhere you put a hockey rink, there's going to be damage. And you have to think about the consequences and the payoff with that. Damage might be the wrong word, but there's going to be an impact.
Correct.
And fortunately, as a Shakopee community and as a local organizing committee, the premier arena and rink builder for ice arenas is located and headquartered here in Shakopee. Becker Arena is a Shakopee-based company. Their general manager, GM, sales guy, is a former Shakopee Youth Hockey Board president and has visited with our committee to talk about, okay, well, you want to put a hockey rink out in the middle of a field? Here's how you do it. We've done this hundreds of times, and we're a Shakopee-based company, so we'll hold your hand through the whole process, which is great to see a local company using their expertise to benefit a local community. So that's question number one. Number two was what?
Good one.
Money.
Oh, yeah,
Money. Let's talk
money,
about
money, right?
Yeah.
That's, you want to know about money? We're not asking you for any money today. We're not there yet. We don't know that. Will there be an impact? We're going to raise a ton of money. And so it's our intention to over-raise and give back, leave legacy gifts, as noted by what the city and community of Mankato experienced. That's the intention of this, to fully fund the project.
But you're talking about money, you're saying you're going to raise, maybe that goes towards you, right? Your organization?
Correct, and, I've got all of our bylaws and how we're drawn up and organized as a committee, as a nonprofit. In our wrapping up phase, we have to disperse those funds at the end of it. And, it's in our, it's a constitution or bylaws, it says we have to give those out as legacy gifts, which is exactly what the community of Mankato experienced.
Okay, and
We have the benefit of being the 18th or 19th Hockey Day in Minnesota, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There will be some city involvement, I would imagine, because it is a big event. But one thing that we are committed to in terms of any space that we end up taking, any site, that we leave it better than the way that we brought into it. We might have to ask for some leverage a little bit. Like, for example, if we were to use the Joe, one of the things that came up is resetting the field might take time, so the baseball team might have to do an extra few road games early on in the season. But in terms of the quality of the field and the way that we leave the space, our intention, and based on having experience of other HDM Minnesotas previously, that we can leave that space better than the way we found it.
Okay.
With our finance, we would be financially responsible for that.
More? Counselor Lehman?
thank you.
Couple of questions. If you're gonna put a rink somewhere, I assume this is in the wintertime. Have you thought about broadening your options by being able to do it in the summertime? I mean, we've got 2 sheets at the community center. Then you're not strapped to the winter.
Right, it's not up to us, it's a Minnesota Wild, they do it in January every year, and for us to win the bid, it's a winter event, it's an outdoor event, at least it has been.
It's required to be an outdoor event?
We don't write the requirements, we
Well,
follow
do you
them.
know if it's a requirement of the Minnesota Wild to be an outdoor event?
That'd be a question you'd have to ask the Minnesota Wild.
Okay.
I would imagine that they would skip over a community and rule us out rather than changing the tradition they've established as it being a January event.
Well, there's a difference in my mind between January and outside. They may have a requirement of January to fit a scheduling timeline that they have and not necessarily
Yeah.
require it to be outside.
And of course,
so
I can't speak for the Wild.
I'll contact them and ask them that question. And then the other thing, it's really hard to plan when you don't know a location, a timeline, because we take our facilities, our existing facilities, and we schedule them in advance. And you're on the park board, you know this.
Yes, I do.
So how do you not schedule for something that you don't know is coming or not? Or schedule for something that may not happen? You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, one of the luxuries that we've got at this stage of the game is that the venue, the location for 2024 hasn't been awarded. We know it won't be us. We are looking at a 2025 or beyond. And per the Minnesota Wild's counsel to us, they are going to announce who is getting it on a 2-year advance notice. So that addresses your concern, I believe, that.
Yeah.
And at the date of their announcement, it probably won't come as a surprise to the community that's about to be awarded. So you're talking about a potentially 27 to 28 month lead time with already boots on the ground having thought through how this could work.
Okay. And then they have the dates too, I would assume.
Correct.
And typically, how many days is this?
Well, Hockey Day, Minnesota, is a day.
Okay.
As I shared in my presentation, the Mankato event turned into a 4-day event with things happening Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And that has become the new norm.
It wasn't all at one site, it was spread out on different sites?
Correct.
Okay.
Counselor Brennan?
I think everybody's got my questions taken care of. I was mostly concerned about the time frame and the time frame that you're working on. So other than that, I think I understand what you're saying.
More questions? Counselor White?
One suggestion, it won't come as a surprise, but I would think about talking to the Shakopee Lions. They have a pond hockey event that raises money for, who knows? So, opportunity.
One thing that is extremely important to us is to involve the community, like the Lions Club or Hosanna. we see this first and foremost as a community event, so we definitely want to involve Shakopee as a whole.
The list of folks we need to talk to in town about this is long.
Great.
You're at the top of it, so we're here tonight.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Do you have more, Counselor Contreras?
I do. One last one. I just wanted to know, since you're doing your homework now, if it would be possible for you to look into the impacts, negative, positive, of other cities that have had this, and if you'd share them like back with us and say like, well, you know what, we learned that Mankato, this happened, but we'll make sure this doesn't happen. You
Right.
know, like, just since you're researching now and we have the time to do it,
Absolutely.
look to see, you know, positive and negative, and that way we, like you said, we're not reinventing anything, but we can make things better.
That
So,
point is well taken.
please, all right, thank you.
Mr. Reynolds?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Member of Council. Part of the reason that Hockey Day Minnesota is here is because we have been involved to a degree, but I'm uncomfortable without you moving forward for us spending any more time on this, frankly. I can tell you that there are concerns from police, finance, park and rec, public works, and administration on this. Our job is to be skeptical, but you know, if you are wanting to move forward with this, we'll do everything we can to make it a success. But ultimately, you have to make that call. At this point, I've spent probably 20, 25 hours on this issue, and I know other members of staff have done as well. But ultimately, this is your call. And so if we could get some guidance from you, I'd appreciate it. And then we all understand what's happening, and we can move forward.
Thank you. Mr. Reynolds, or Counselor Lehman?
Thanks, Mayor. I think the site-specific location has to be consistent with the amount of people that you're expecting. Otherwise, you're just creating a problem for yourself. And, you know, that's probably limited to a couple of different sites, you know. You got a great big giant ice rink out on O'Dowd's, but you have zero parking. You know what I'm saying? So that's going to be one of the most important logistical pieces is egress for people for this kind of a size of event. I like the lead time. That's good. But as this rolls out, we're going to have to talk more about expense on the taxpayers, whether it's staff time, loss of revenue from a facility that could have been rented, so on and so forth, and how that's covered. Okay?
Agreed.
You know, Mr. Mayor, sorry, I just thought of a question, thank you. Has this ever been held on a private location? You know, I don't know if the amphitheater will be ready by then, but there's one maybe next door that, you know, more of a venue that can handle quite a crowd like that we happen to have in town here? Has that ever been thought of?
When you say, are you referring to something specifically?
Like, I was thinking maybe if you partnered with Canterbury or something like that.
In our conversations and vetting out of all the possible locations that we could have here in Shakopee, we discussed the concept with Canterbury. We also discussed the concept of Canterbury with the Minnesota Wild. That met with some friction.
Okay, I just thought of it, so thank you.
And if I may, you're looking to develop a site plan for a specific site, and you know what that is currently.
Right now, at this point, if we were to go with what we've got best, we would love to look at where the Minnesota Wild have already walked around and said, we think this could really work. Can you give us a site plan? And that would be for Joe Slepper Stadium at Tapa.
And just,
So,
go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
you know, if there's no other questions for the committee, and, you know, this is an evolving thing. This is an exploratory committee. I've been on this board, they've been at it for about a year. It's time that they would like to come before the city council to try to get some consensus, to try to get some involvement with the city. All the money will be raised by the committee. There may be at the end some in-kind action and things from the city. It's no different than any partnership with any other big event, Rhythm on the Rails, or the Taste of Shakopee, or actually you know, our community has held 2 or 3 state amateur baseball tournaments in the last couple of years, drawing 15 to 20,000 people at a city park that we have put money in, and we also have a great partner that commits to that. This Hockey Day in Minnesota is a community event. It's a snow globe event for the community. Just so happens that a hockey game is involved in it. It was developed years ago for a high school hockey game outdoors. It is held in January. That's part of the deal. It was in conjunction with a pro game, a college game, and a high school game. They've been doing this for a lot of years. And I've known many of the locations that we have, and the goodwill that it brings to each community about a winter event. We have a lot of summer events, right? Every night, almost every week. But in the winter, it gets a little tougher. This is a celebration of winter in hockey. I think, from my standpoint, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It's not like they hand these out every, 10 a year. You get one. And this committee is working to try to build partnerships, and the site, the Wild, have been on the ground twice. They've looked at the high school football stadium, the Canterbury was discussed, Valley Fair was discussed. They're looking for uniqueness, right? Each site, Duluth was up on their bayfront, Stillwater was down along the river, Mankato was held on the University football stadium. So these are pretty big draws over a couple days, and the game is one day, but there may be a girls' high school game, or another high school, or another youth game as well. I don't think this is any different than other partnerships within the city that go out. I think it's an opportunity to showcase Shakopee as a whole. We are very cautious about the amount of staff time. The committee wants to try to do it all. I don't think that we can do it all, but I think we can do 90% of it. Whatever site is chosen, a lot of discussion is the prep work, and it's about 2 weeks before the 1 week event, and then the 1 week event, and then a week or two after that. It is outside, so there's some impact. The committee is strongly devoted to putting the site back to the site in which we found it, if not better. Obviously, you take something down in the winter, and the after effects might take a little while. But this could be a direct benefit to Shakopee, and this committee is strong, able, and willing, and we want to be in a position to be able to present to the Wild this opportunity, and hopefully we would get awarded that. And the timeline, they just announced 23, and then in January of 23 they'll announce 24. We're not getting that, so you can kind of get the timeline. Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, just one thing that we also need to keep in mind, that Shakopee will be hosting the state amateur baseball tournament again in 2026.
Right.
So.
Right. And the uniqueness that the Minnesota Wild look for, as I already mentioned, and I can tell you from the heart of the committee that we've discussed the after effects and would want to do nothing to harm and put it back the way it was. I mean, that, regardless of where it is. Councilor Lehman, or Councilor Whiting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've served on an event committee with you. Don't let him buy fireworks. Budget goes right out the window. I've served with Mr. Lehman on Derby Days committee. We know what it takes to get one of these events even moving, so it's a lot. And to get to the level that the Minnesota Wild want to be part of it, you're going to have to do a lot of legwork in advance. So we're not going to win that award without every check mark checked. So I support the idea. I want to see all the details. We're going to want to watch this. I don't want to have the city, I don't want to spend any money on it. You're going to have to raise all the money. But they'll be in kind, I'm sure, as there always has been with all these events. But I would support it.
Counselor Brennan?
Yeah, I think right now, without understanding what the cost is, I can't make that decision. I need to know what the cost is for our taxpayers, and you know, we're using our staff right now, and we're proposing a use of a site. So I need to know what their actual benefits are to the community, in a dollar amount, in a dollar spent and a dollar received, and I don't have that information.
Well, this is not, the committee's not here asking for money. They're here asking for partnership. I anticipate no actual cash dollars. That's the whole idea of the committee, to raise some money, and even if I can't measure the in-kind because I don't know what that entails, but it would be no different than how Rhythm on the Rails is run, or the events during the winter, or the Baseball Association putting on a state amateur baseball tournament. We're trying to do this without city money, with no impact, but the benefits to the community about an outstanding one-time in a year event to celebrate winter, hockey, and community. We'll try to get some videos to show of the last couple events, just in a storytelling way, and it's really about the communities that are the host city.
Yeah, well, typically that information is provided by the chamber and before it comes to the board, to make a decision on it, and that's where I'm at.
Councilor Lehman?
Well, I can certainly appreciate Councilor Brennan's concerns, which I raised earlier, the same ones. I'm going to kind of compare it to the baseball tournaments, and granted, it's a different time of year, but I think what you have is you have a nonprofit that wants to put all the legwork in and the volunteer time to do a lot of this stuff, and it's to me, I don't want all the details. I really want the logistics piece, okay? Because working on some of these projects myself, it's all logistics. 90% is, well, maybe 80% in your case or less, but logistics is key. You know your dates and who's doing this and who's doing what, and you've got this covered with the police department, the fire department, the administrative pieces, garbage cans, all of the technical details to make it function successfully are in the logistics. So, there's spin-off benefits like any event in town where a lot of our residents or even some outside folks are going to spin off and go to various restaurants and bars and whatever else, they need something, they stop at a store and buy it or whatever. So you get that spin-off benefit from that aspect, whether it's this or any other type of event. So that's a positive. But it really, you really got to worry about what does this actually cost the taxpayers, and not direct donations per se, but if you have staff working on this for hundreds of hours, that's a lot of money. It may not be a dollar amount, but the billable hours are very expensive. So, if your group is willing to do 90% of the legwork and put them logistics together and then meet with a staff person that can look it over and make sure the police and all these concerns are nailed down. Been there, done it many times myself with Derby Days and other adventures. That would lighten the load on the taxpayer side. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of positives that could come out of this. I'm looking forward to seeing more information. I don't know how we can just give you a blanket yes. Can't really do that. We can say we like the concept, we like the idea, we think it could be a very positive thing. Get us some more information, and let's keep working this ball, or this puck, I'm sorry.
Okay. Councilor Whiting, you'd already expressed,
I think we're good.
at least consensus support. Councilor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think Councilor Lehman just said everything. So all I'll say is, give me more. I want to know more.
So what I'm gathering out of the council is that there's at least consensus to try to move forward, connect the city with the committee. Really, the next step is to develop a site plan.
Logistics.
Huh?
Site plan and
Yeah.
logistics.
And we would need a schematic electronic site plan, and then our committee would put together the different, the locations and the aspects of the layout of a site, and then submit that to the Wild. I'm sure after that step, the next step would be some fundraising action of where we're at and where we think we're gonna be. So, yeah.
Can we have this group work on the layout and logistics and then bring that through staff for overview first before going to the Wild?
Yeah, we could do that.
Is that a question of our committee?
Well, it's both a question of the committee and a kind of
It would be our intention if we are working on a site plan where the Minnesota Wild wants to use city property. That's going to inextricably intertwine us, and we're going to have to be real clear on what we're bringing to the table and what we're asking of city. Well, we're not there yet because we don't have a venue. We want to win. Right now, the best location, the one that the Wild likes most so far, happens to be city property. If it turns out that there's just, city's not that excited about it, we are still gonna look at using it on non-city property, which intertwines us less. But I would love to tell the story of how we started this from the get-go as a partnership, council and a group of really involved citizens who really want to see this community succeed together.
Can I do a hypothetical? Put together a site plan for Tapa Park. Put the logistic pieces with that site plan, run it through staff. It'll take them 15 minutes to look it over and say, how about this, 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 and this? And then you add them components. Okay, they've done it many, many times too. They know what the little pieces are that are very important to make success. You can revise it, send it back for another 10 or 15-minute overview. I'm sure the police department are going to want to have a say in it, and so forth and so on. They're helping you refine it with very minimal impact to staff.
Well, good.
Then when you turn it to the Wild, they can see the effort that's been put in it jointly by the community, and they can see that all the avenues are covered, and that's.
Okay. Mr. Reynolds, I think we're on our way here to trying to build consensus.
And essentially, just so everybody knows, I mean, if you guys give your thumbs up, we'll do our thing.
Yeah. All right.
And you know how we do it, and we're pretty good at it, so.
And,
I'm just trying to minimize the taxpayers' cost.
we good?
Do you have an anticipation on how much time at this point you need to use staff before you come back to us? And can we put a time on it, or?
Right now, so we're just taking this step by step. Tonight was an opportunity to show city council that, hey, we're a committee that's looking to win this bid for the community of Shakopee. Site plan is what the Wild requested from us next, to see that we can actually put things together. And I think what Councilman Lehman said is a great idea. The one thing caveat I'd say to that is there's a production team that's involved, Valley Sports North, and all of their things that they need also. So that was part of the site visits when the Wild and Valley Sports North have come here twice. After that, shortly after that, budgets are one of the first things that get done. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. That's the reason we don't have those exact numbers for you, but that's one thing. When Bill Reynolds came to our committee meeting, he reached out to other cities to see how much they were involved. There's a roadmap that's been already placed down, so we will be able to provide that information. It's just, tonight we're just looking for consensus of support, so.
Matthew, Eric, your committee, thanks for coming in front of us today and discussing your awesome opportunity, at least in my mind. And we'll carry forward here. We built some consensus, and look forward to seeing your next steps way down the line.
Thank you. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all. Let's move ahead then. to 7A, a public hearing for a vacation of a public drainage and utility easement in Henches Industrial Park, second edition, and Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, I make a motion to open the public hearing.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing. Further discussion, discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, those opposed, the public hearing is all now open, and Michael will present, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you said, this is a vacation of public and drainage and utility easements within Henches Industrial Park, second edition. This is the easement vacation area. This is actual a sketch of the vacation of easements. It's this, get this to work. Over here. It's this little area over here. You all have approved the new plat, and so we need, so these can get signed, we need to vacate this easement tonight to finish this off. They have dedicated in the new plat the necessary easements. There's 5 feet on each side, and this piece is no longer needed. So staff recommends vacating these easements as the developer intends to subdivide the property for new industrial development, and the reconfiguration of those lots render the existing easements not desirable. New easements are provided with the planning of Hedges Industrial Park, third edition, which was previously approved.
Good, thank you. Questions of staff, and obviously the one that Counselor Lehman and I think about, we're gonna, if we vacate it, and then they do something, we get it back at the next plat, right?
Mayor and Council, that's correct, and actually, you've approved the new easements, but it was subject to this vacation.
Okay, Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, I think mine are covered under 1, 2, 3, 4 in the resolution itself. I think I addressed it.
Further questions? Questions of staff? If not, the applicant have any comment? This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to make comment on this proposal for this vacation, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none, Counselor Brennan.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Whiting to close the public hearing. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. Counselor Brennan.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number R 2022-090 regarding the vacation of public drainage and utility easements as dedicated within the Henches Industrial Park Edition 2, or second edition.
I have a motion by Counselor Brennan, a second by Counselor Contreras. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead then to public hearing for 7B for a vacation of easement in Windermere South 5th Edition. Counselor Whiting.
Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Contreras to open the public hearing. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The public hearing is now open. Michael, welcome.
Mayor and Council, again, this is vacation of public drainage and utility easements with, it's in the wrong title here. I opened the wrong one here, sorry. Get the right one open. Again, Mayor, this is a vacation of public and drainage and utility easements within Windermere South 5th Edition. So this is the easement vacation area. We have previously platted the right side here of the subdivision. We'll be vacating this blanket easement, and later this evening you will see the final plat. So this is currently the outlot and the easement area to be vacated. Staff recommends vacating this easement as the developer intends to subdivide the property for residential lots, and this blanket easement is no longer necessary as the new easements will be provided with the new subdivision Windermere 6 South Edition, which is on the agenda tonight.
Questions of staff, Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I'm wondering why there was a blanket easement put over this area to begin with.
Mayor and council members, we typically do that for outlots, rather than segment where, you know, specific areas that we need for drainage or utilities that may or may not get built, just blanket over the outlot, nothing is being done with it, with the understanding that in the future, at this point, we will vacate it. It makes it simple, a simple process.
Gives you more flexibility with future easements for drainage and stuff?
Not necessarily flexibility, but if we need something, we being the city, if we need some type of right to fix something for drainage issue, we have that right to make sure no negative impacts on adjacent property or within the property. It just gives the city a lot of flexibility to address issues in the interim until it's, you know, the full development is completed.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? This is a public hearing, and the developer would like to come forward, make comment on this. This is a public hearing. If anybody else would like to come forward and make comment on this vacation of this easement in Windermere South 5th Edition, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. Seeing none,
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Contreras to close the public hearing. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Counselor Whiting.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution R 2022-091 regarding the vacation of a public drainage and utility easements as dedicated within Windermere South 5th Edition.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Contreras for approval by resolution. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to entertain a motion to recess to our EDA meeting. Counselor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to recess to our EDA meeting.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for recess for EDA. Further discussion? Discussion, discussion, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. We stand in recess. Madam President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I call to order the July 19th Shakopee Economic Development Authority meeting. And if staff could please note the roll. And item number 2 is the approval of the agenda. Mr. Mars?
Madam President, I make a motion to approve the agenda as stated.
Second.
Been a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes 5-0. Item number 3 on the agenda is the consent business, and that is the EDA minutes. Mr. Lehman?
I'll move the consent agenda.
There's been a motion and a second by Mars
I second that, yep.
to approve the consent business. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Item number 4 is the general business, and 4A is a review of the concept for changes to the River City Center. And Mr. Kursky has a presentation.
Board members, so this is kind of a three-part presentation, but first I was going to run through. We retained RSP Architects that took a look at the building. They have met and worked with the CDA and the CDA's property management company, Great Lakes Property Management, and Julie Siegert, the director at the CDA, also presented this to their board. So this was the inspiration that came from the architects, some way to try and make kind of a better sense of place at the River City Center. Some of the areas identified are the lighting, the building lighting, the current awnings, the current facade, the sidewalk width, some of the treatments on the end for the anchor tenants. The painting on this building has had some tough times because it's a red color, which has not held up well in the sun, nor have the awnings held up that well. So we asked them to kind of think out of the box to come up with some ideas that necessarily would not change the upper floors very much, but work really on the pedestrian scale. So The difference between option A and B are basically the signage belt, but you can see this. The existing bays on the upper floors and on the bridge would be painted more of a neutral color, and then construction of new storefronts. Most of the storefronts have either started to fail or are failing now or will fail soon. The building has reached that age where things like gaskets and the glass just don't hold up that much anymore. And so they tried to re-envision kind of how this could become a new landmark for downtown. So again, opening up the storefronts, as most of you are familiar with this building, the storefronts have doors and then it's kind of bricked up on the sides. A more cleaner look is to really have more storefronts that run from ceiling to floor with a signage band above. And that's basically what this is showing. And then potentially introducing some additional streetscaping. One of the issues that was found through the survey process is the sidewalks currently in certain areas tip into the building. They have not got water filtration into the garage yet, but there has been some water into some of the storefronts. So doing similar to what the city did on the Lewis Street parking lot, the street trees would be sitting in Silva cells, which are large plastic cells that allow the tree roots to expand, but also serve as a stormwater area so that they could absorb some of the water that currently is sheet flowing on the sidewalk. Again, some nighttime kind of concepts here. And then on the end, pulling these metal and glass awnings out to kind of give some scale to the building. And then this is the backside facing north. One of the things that came up working with the CDA and the management company, this parking lot's really dark. So one of the recommendations is the same street lights that would go on the south side on the street, that we put some in the parking lot to provide better lighting in the parking lot. So this is really the big difference between option A and B. Option A is to put the store names on top of the canopies. Option B is to provide a black housing band where the businesses' names would go into, and those would actually be lit at night so that they'd be a lot more visible. And we'd have kind of a uniformity then in the signage panel. Right now it's kind of a hodgepodge. And again, you can see the layout here. These would be the sign panels for the various businesses. And again, just showing how this, one of the things the architects found is that there's a different material in this area. So they're trying to actually kind of cover it up. They talked with Great Lakes and some others about staining it, but they thought the best solution was probably to cover it up because it does not match any of these materials and kind of actually breaks the building up. So the idea of doing the sign band would kind of create a uniform element that could be easily changed when the stores move. I think this one shows the best. You can see the sign panel back here. So that's the first part on the design changes.
Okay,
Feedback for this? Oh, Counselor?
thank you. Does anybody have any comments on this?
Did you have a comment?
I do. Madam President, I apologize. I like what I see. The two different signage, so one is actually on the awning and then one is on the building, right?
Madam President and board members, that's correct. So one, they would be pin letters that would not necessarily be illuminated on top of the awnings. The others would be a very thin LED box light that would have a black panel, and then the letters would be punched out for the signs in their logo style or in their name.
I follow up. I like the cleaner, more open concept that you're showing in both. I'm a little torn on the signs. I think if you had an awning and then the sign was on the building and I'm a pedestrian and looking up, you know, am I gonna look through that awning to see the sign, or
So, Madam President and board members, one of the things they're thinking of is doing some blade signs. So some other examples from other cities where they have that awning, so for the pedestrian, up in the awning would actually be the business name. The box sign on top is really for people driving by or looking from the highway through the backside. One of the things that was interesting is that most people's impression of this building is the north side, because they don't realize this is a mixed-use building.
Right, I think, you know, it's our entranceway to our community. It's one of the reasons this building was built, is to enhance the look as you drive into town, and we now have a great statue, and it's much improved than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago, but, here we have another opportunity to really take that to the next level, so, Madam President, those are my comments.
Okay. Any other comments? Angelica?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I like rendering B because of the bigger and brighter signage. To me, I mean, I'm only getting older, so the bigger the better. And I just have to say the seating to me is amazing. We need that extra seating. There's never enough seating, so I like that seating. Otherwise, I like the idea, and rendering B is in my personal, it's my favorite.
Mr. Whiting?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, seating isn't listed in any of these options here, but it is in the rendering, so I want to make sure that it is part of our concept.
Madam President and board members, yes, I mean, these are just kind of renderings,
Okay.
but they'll get down to the more fine grain. As Board Member Contreras mentioned, I think on one of the renderings, that's this one here, they're showing more block seating and more benches, so there's a mixture. So depending on who you are, we talk to the residents, and they prefer regular benches, and some people prefer blocks. So they said the blocks are much harder on the older people to sit on. The younger people said they prefer the benches, so I think we'll have a mixture of both.
You got some options there. Okay, thank you. If I can continue. No, I think the option B would be my preference. I like I agree with you on that sign band, breaking that tan up a little bit. It actually looks like some framing. In this plan, I did notice you're talking about the infiltration sidewalks, and I know that can be really expensive, and just wondering if that's actually the best way to protect some of the water issues, or if there's some other options there that might do it for cheaper, I guess, but just a thought. But otherwise, I think I like the plan. I like the added awnings, especially the louvered ones. I think they add the shade without breaking it up, and more permanent rather than some of those awnings that are gone within a few years, or just like we have now, just faded. So that's my point.
Mr. Lehman?
2 questions. 20 years ago, this was sold as it's going to come off the tax rolls and be a windfall for the city. So at what point does this get back on the tax rolls and start paying taxes?
President and board members, so it's paying taxes right now. The CDA pays a payment in lieu of taxes, and the commercial portion pays market property taxes. The entire project reverts back to the EDA in 2035.
And how much is all this going to cost?
Madam President, board members, we're still working on the costs. The preliminary estimate was about $1.5 million, but Cross Anderson, we've retained them, and they're actually running real numbers on construction costs. So we'll be back with a real number on the construction costs.
Okay. I think it's a very attractive building. I like the breakup of with the lighter color on the center part of the building and on the rounder parts of the windows. And I like the option B also, because I think it really blends in with our downtown sign that we have, with those lighted signs. I do have concerns that if they wanted to have their logo and how they would do that. But if there is a hanging down sign, then maybe they can incorporate their logo on there. I know that in our past conversation about this, we wanted to bring people to the other side of the parking on the north side of the building. I think that the street lighting would really draw people in at night. But during the day would draw people into the backside of the building, do you think?
Madam Chair and board members, so I think one of the goals, let's see if we can find the right picture here. So on the back side, they will be doing similar canopies that are on the front side, and there would be that sign band back here. So some of the tenants we've been working on to get in here, so Shakopee Florist will be relocating here, and probably 80% of their business will be coming through the back door because they have people coming in and picking up flowers, particularly on Valentine's Day and holidays. And we talked to them about on the street side, how could they make it more attractive? Maybe it's buckets with flowers in it or something that people walking by could buy. But I think the goal is to really activate that backside with people like them where they're gonna generate a lot of traffic. That will be probably their main front door for their drive-up business. And there's a perception right now that that parking lot is not public. It is, it's owned by the EDA, and it is one of the lots that we control. So we'll work on some signage concepts to allow people to know there's public parking back there.
Okay. I think the street lighting on that side of the building would be really beneficial because it is very dark back there when you're coming across the bridge. And any more conversation, Mr. Mars?
Just, Madam President, I think if this were to move along here to bring final concepts and costs along, and there, you know, it sounds like a lot of money today. But I don't believe that since this building has been built, that this type of upgrade, improvement of this magnitude has ever occurred in that building. And the building's over 20 years old. Yes, they did some rework on those cloth awnings, but, you know, you gotta invest, you gotta renew, you gotta refresh. I think this is a great opportunity for our community and our downtown, from what I see, and I'd like to see this at least move forward to final concepts and tightening up the costs.
And, excuse me, and Chair, President, and board members, the other thing I wanted to mention is, so the first time we've ever used Silva Cells was on that Lewis Street parking lot on Lewis Street. And so the university forestry department's been monitoring those trees and the ones in the parking lot. And those trees are 2 to 3 times the size because the roots actually can stretch out. They get a lot more water and nutrients that way. And they've actually been droning the trees every year and measuring them. And they're doing much better than any of the street trees are in downtown.
Interesting. So we recently changed the plaza area. Are we retaining a lot of that modification in this plan, or are we getting rid of those modifications and just?
We'll be leaving most of that there. The only big changes would be putting new benches in those sitting blocks up on the street. And potentially one of the things they wanted to look at is where the Christmas tree goes, whether that could actually be made into a larger green area, because it's fairly constricted right now.
Okay. Any more comments? Anything from us on this, or you just wanted to?
Just feedback, which I've gotten.
Okay. Next on the agenda is item number 4B, which is an outline of the new agreement with the Scott County CDA on the River City Center. And Mr. Kursky, stop again.
Madam President, board members, we sent a draft from our attorneys over to them along with all the documents. We did receive a letter today. I think in general, the CDA is endorsing moving forward. They asked for 60 days to work out an agreement. One of the issues with this project is there are 3 or 4 intertwined agreements. This was a very complicated deal. I think the EDA spent probably $10,000 just weeding through with our new outside law firm all the documents so that they could get straightened out. And right now, I think the CDA's only concern is that they want to be a party to the assignment so they don't get any litigation from the current master tenant. So our attorney is meeting with their attorney tomorrow to put some language in the agreement to basically indemnify the CDA, which was one of their main concerns.
Okay.
But I think they're willing to move forward over the next 60 days. We'll bring back a final agreement to you.
Okay, and I think we all got a copy of that letter on our stations here.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think one of the issues that through our audit and working with with Mr. Reinhardt is there's a significant balance in the current bond account. So if you remember, the city is the guarantor on the bonds on the commercial and also on the second level. The bonds on the first level have actually accelerated. They were refinanced, and as part of that, they escrowed a significant deposit. We want to make sure that we get credited back, because that actually was the city's money, so that when those bonds get paid off, they use that escrow to pay the bonds off, that we're not paying that. And then the upstairs bonds are not related to the city, but that we guarantee them are expire in 2027.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Myers?
Madam President, we just got this letter that was on the table from the CDA Executive Director, and I just was reading it before the meeting and trying to go through it quickly. I do have some concerns about some of their points. Is this where this letter applies to exactly what we're talking about on the agenda item?
Madam Chairman and board members, yes. So we sent them over in June an outline from our attorney of issues that they found in all the agreements that need to be resolved. They came back today with that. Our attorney and their attorney will discuss those issues tomorrow and hopefully hammer out. I mean, one of the issues is we brought to their attention they're sitting on a significant amount of money. The bond issuer is that we want that money to apply back to the bonds and not go to the CDA.
Right. Well, I read your outline, and I like a majority of this, and I agree on the escrow aspect, but I'm concerned here we are with this, and some of this to me, Madam President, doesn't quite jive with what I'm seeing in your memo.
Do you have any comments?
I spoke to our attorney, Michael Clem, who said he wasn't surprised. He pushed on our side because that's his job, but he said there was nothing that he saw in that letter that was kind of a deal killer, that because it's such a complicated layer, what his original goal was is we get rid of all the agreements that are currently in place, because the master tenant would go away, and basically the CDA would be responsible for everything above the first floor. We'd be responsible for everything below the first floor, the street, sidewalks, and parking lot. And if the roof leaks, it's on the CDA. If a storefront breaks, it's on the EDA. And I think the property management company is on board with that. I know the director is on board with that. This has been very difficult to manage, to say the least, over the past 20 years, and having something that would be much simpler would be helpful for everybody.
Okay.
Give you a good example. The property taxes right now are paid by the CDA, and the master tenant reimburses them. They would like us just to pay the property taxes directly. They don't need to be the middleman in the agreement.
Okay. Ms. Contreras?
Thank you. Sorry if this shows my ignorance, and if it does, so be it. But you're showing me $301,681, and right here on the second bullet point, they're talking about $320,000 that we're paying. Is that the same one? I mean, there's just a tiny discrepancy of $18,000.
Yep. So, Madam President, board members, these numbers came after the lawyers talked. So the 320 was their first number. This was their more refined number after we went through all of their finances. So this number you're seeing on the screen is the current buyout number.
The 301.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And then if you notice, there's kind of to seller and buyer. So depending on whenever this closes, there would be some money back and forth, just like in any real estate transaction.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So what do you need from us tonight?
I think since we don't have a final agreement yet, Madam Chair, I would suggest that I think we've got enough direction from all of you to tell Mr. Clem as we get through negotiations where we're at.
Okay.
I think they're, based on what Ms. Seeger told me this afternoon some of the board members are not familiar with this project, and they thought the CDA owned the building and they were going to sell it. And she kind of said, it'd be hard to do because we don't actually own it. So the discussion runs from a simple agreement and we keep it in place till 2035. The EDA gets it back. There was some of the board members on the CDA that would like to extend that to be senior housing a longer term. Some of them had a discussion that the best interest of the city longer term to have that senior housing, and there was some wide range of discussion, she said, on what the purpose of the CDA's housing was there. So we will hopefully get that resolved over the next 60 days.
Okay. So tonight in front of us is the resolution. Are we approving that resolution?
No, you don't need
we're
to
gonna
approve that
wait.
tonight. No.
Okay. Is there any other questions on that? Okay, item 4C is a lease transfer agreement for River City Center.
So Madam President, this, you can see on the screen here, this is how they came up with that number. So basically a sale price of $100,000. They have prepaid the master lease, and if you remember the master lease, which is, I believe $8 a square foot right now, is what's paying the bonds. So they have prepaid the bonds for this year already. They were due in July, and they did make that payment. And then there's the real estate tax credit, the tenant deposits that they're holding, and the amortized lease fees and tenant improvement costs. So that is the leasing commissions that they've been paying over time out to their brokers. So one of the last items that would be negotiated is we have asked, there's a number of new tenants that they have leased to that haven't opened up, that should those tenants not open within the next 6 months, that money would be placed in escrow, and if they don't, that money would come back to the EDA because there would be no reason to pay a commission to someone if the tenant didn't open. Same is true with the tenant improvement costs. If a tenant doesn't open, they didn't really have tenant improvement costs, so that money would be escrowed. So there's 2 tenants you'll see on the list that have not opened yet that would apply to.
Madam President,
Yep.
so I did see the 2 tenants but if they were to build out and never open, then that,
So what would happen then is the escrow money for the commission would come back to the EDA because you didn't fulfill your job as a broker to actually have a tenant that was paying rent. And so I can jump to so these are the rent roll as of July. There's only one current vacancy, that's unit number 145, which is 1,330 square feet. So Concrete Mobility's lease is up in '23. Canterbury Chiropractic lease is also up in '23. Shakopee Floors is a new tenant. They begin paying November 1st, so they gave them some free upfront rent in exchange for doing tenant improvements. So they are in there right now. They have a building permit, and they're upfitting their space. Better Pizza is Papa John's. Their lease has been extended until 2030. You can see they're one of the tenants paying a much higher lease. Delicias del Viejo is the ice cream store. Their lease is up in 2027. They have not yet opened. That's one of our tenants of concern. Nicollet Tobacco is up in '24. Underground Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is also up in '24. Haven Health, they've been in that building, I think, since 2006 or earlier. They expanded and moved within the building. Their lease is now up in 2027. They moved over. CA Nails is at $16 a square foot. Their lease is up in '24. And then State Farm is a new tenant. They're only paying $14 a square foot. Their lease is up in '28. Maz Express is where the hairstyling salon was. They signed a 10-year lease with them. They don't need to start paying until October 1st of this year, and their rent will be only at $15 a square foot. And the last tenant is Mortgage Avenue. Their rent right now is only $8.50, but it will go to $17 a square foot on June 1st of '23. They spent about $40,000 on their tenant upfit, so they gave them a discount on rent for improving the space. That's probably the nicest space in the building right now. So gross dollars, it takes in well over $300,000 a year. And the taxes are $76,000.
Mr. Myers?
Madam President, so it just, from this run rate, it just looks like some of these, the rates are kind of pretty varied.
Yes.
You know, if we're gonna take this over and put a major investment into the ground floor aspect, we're gonna try to standardize those a little bit as we move forward. I mean,
Madam President, board members, yes. I mean, the city administrator and I were just chuckling that,
right,
I mean, I love State Farm, but how they got $14 a square foot is beyond me.
Right.
You've got other people in there paying $22.50 and $22. The rent on office space downtown is probably $17 to $18 a square foot. Retail space in the city is probably around 20, so you can see these are all over the map. I think as these leases expire, and we've improved the building, we'll be able to get a more stable tenancy and better rents. I mean, Concrete Mobility, for instance, is just they're in the old hometown bank. They didn't do any improvements to it. They don't do anything with downtown. It's just an office for a firm out of Texas that's there paying $4,000 a month until 2023. I think the goal would be to make sure we get tenants in there that add something back to the downtown vitality.
no, I just, you know, the amount of variable of this, and, I remember talking to the old master lease tenant or one of their agents, and, it's interesting how, I never saw these numbers before, so thank you.
$12 swing, yeah.
Yes. Is there any other comments? Okay.
So, Madam President, if you approve moving forward with this agreement tonight, we'll come back at the next EDA meeting, which will be the first week in August, with a new modification of the TIF plan, because we have excess TIF revenue that we could reinvest in this building that we have to use within 24 months. So that TIF revenue would go back into this project.
That's the TIF pulling that we discussed a few
Yes.
months ago, and,
Yep.
okay.
Madam Chair, I guess, or Madam President, the last agenda item as well as this one, you're not actually asking for resolution support?
The second one, no. On this one, Madam President, yes, we need a resolution because our attorney would like to go back to their side and finalize this, because this should have been done a while ago, and it's actually starting to cost us more money as the time ticks away here.
Mr. Whiting?
Yeah, because item 4B does look like you're requesting action on it.
So 4B, I would ask that we hold until we answer all the CDA's concerns. 4C, we would like an action on so that we can finalize that agreement with the master lease tenant.
Well, I'll make that motion to approve Resolution E 2022-007, approving the transfer and assumption of the leases from the master commercial tenant from River City Center and buying out the existing tenant improvements commissions and master lease from the current holder.
Been a motion, and a second by Contreras to approve this. Is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Let me see, the next thing on our agenda is item number 5, which is the EDA bill list. Is there any questions regarding the EDA bill list? Okay, number 6 is adjournment to Wednesday, August 3rd, 2022. There's been a motion by Contreras.
Second.
A second by Whiting. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0.
Oh, my glass.
It's adjourned.
Madam President, thank you very much. We will reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for July 19th, 2022. We just completed our EDA portion of the meeting, and now we will move forward to 10A1, our monthly financial review. Nate will present. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight I'll be covering our monthly financial review through June of 2022. This slide shows the general fund through June, so we're halfway through the year. Typically, we'd be, expect to be about at 50% of revenues and expenditures. Total revenues are at 56%, so we are tracking ahead for the year. We did receive our first half tax settlement in June. We're continuing to see a lot of building activity. Building permit revenue is tracking significantly ahead of budget targets and last year, and licenses and permits have already exceeded the full year. Expenditures in total are within the budget target today at 47%. Finance is currently exceeding the target percentage. This is primarily a result of our annual audit and assessing contracts, which we pay at the first half of the year but cover the full year. The building inspection department is also exceeding the target percentage, primary result of credit card fees related to building permit revenues and annual software costs. Across all departments, a couple of specific line items we're seeing significant overages in is vehicle fuel costs and natural gas for buildings. For these costs, we are currently 55 to 60% ahead of where we were last year at this point through the year. Again, these are across all divisions, but if fuel prices remain high, we'd probably end up around 200,000 over budget from just these two line areas or line items for the full year. Here's the recreational facility operations budget to actual. Sand Venture did open in June. We're currently at 53% of our budgeted annual revenue. The ice arena continues to remain profitable, and for the community center, we are up some from last year, but below what we expected in terms of budget targets. Also included in the council packet was the second quarter investment report. This slide shows interest earnings for the first half in comparison to the previous 4 years. The lighter blue line being 2022. We're at about 406,000 through the first half, which is up about 94,000 from last year, but below the 3 years prior to that. I would expect this line to continue to trend upwards through the end of the year, through the end of 2023, as we've seen rates rise pretty significantly, and we'll probably end up right in the $1 million range for investment income for the full year. To put things in perspective, the full investment report that's provided in the council packet provides historical performances, and it uses the 3-year treasury as the benchmark for performance. That 3-year treasury on June 30th was 2.95%. A year ago, that was 0.20%, so quite the dramatic shift in the past year. The light blue line on this slide shows the market value adjustment of investments for the year. Again, the upward shift in interest rates, we're seeing a pretty substantial market value adjustment. The adjustment is just on paper, and as we do intend to hold all these investments until maturity, but we're currently looking at a market value adjustment for the year of $2.23 million. For our financials, we're required to make that adjustment once a year, and that would occur as of December 31st, so we have not made that adjustment yet. When rates flatten out, you will start to see these lines invert as investments come closer to par as they get close to the maturity, so you'll eventually see what goes up and down, or what goes down in this case must come back up. So, and I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Questions? Questions of the review? Seeing none, Nate, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. 10A2, we moved up, and we would be at 10B1, the final plat for Windermere South 6th Edition. Michael, welcome back.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Again, this is the final plat for Windermere South 6th Edition. This is the plat where you just vacated that easement. So this is the outline of the area we're talking about. Spuck's water tank, you can see, is up in the top here. So basically what this plat will do is this will be the new entrance for Shakopee Public Utilities, and they will be getting rid of their easternmost entrance. So this is showing the landscape plan. You can see right now, Shakopee Public Utilities is entering from this location. The goal is to have their driveway on this parcel and to come up into the future water potential water treatment facility and pump houses. And again, here's the new water tank. So there will be a substantial landscape buffer in the rear yards of those lots adjacent to the tank site and along County Highway 78. There's a trail system greenway proposed to this development, which is representative of the Parks and Trails Master Plan and would serve as a connection to the Windermere Park and Bluffland to the north. If you all remember, we have some substantial parks we've developed. This over in the eastern corner here, along with Windermere actually built playground equipment and new trails that all connect eventually to the Windermere Neighborhood Park. So this will be kind of the last big piece in this section to be completed. So staff recommends approval of this final plat.
Questions of staff, questions of staff? I guess you know, back on the Spuck driveway, are they using the long one that they're doing and they're gonna get this one?
Mayor and Council, that's correct.
Are they gonna close off their long one?
Can't speak for them, Mayor and Council, but I think our plan, as you can see, there is a new trail that will run through here. I think the original plan was that this would eventually close and this will be their new access point.
Steve?
And Mayor and council members, they did plan on preserving that for special uses if they have large, major maintenance, that they could, they could still use that for access to their site. So that it would be converted to a city trail, but it would be built enough to handle truck traffic.
Well, my comment and my concern a little bit about if, and I know they've been using the longer trail and I get that, but if they were to put in more facilities where there would be some major construction of a water treatment facility or more, that they use that rather than kind of go through the neighborhood.
Mayor and Council, that's correct. So that trail up there, as Mr. Lihog mentioned, is designed for bringing in cranes or heavy equipment to build that facility. But it will not be their daily entrance.
Thanks for that information, appreciate it. Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, I'm looking at this empty lot right here with the trail on it. That's a new driveway?
It'll be the new driveway access for the water tower that,
Okay.
for normal maintenance.
And up here?
That's the one they use right now, and that will be.
So Mayor and Council, this is the road they're using for everything right now. This will end up becoming access point for heavy equipment if there is a crane or something they have to bring into service this. But typically, they have small trucks, pickup trucks coming in here for service. Maybe a slightly larger truck, they would be able to access right through here and not have to use this on a regular basis.
So does the utility have a easement on that maintenance road?
Mayor and Council, that's their property, so we would have a trail easement on it.
All right.
Other questions of staff? Other questions of staff? Seeing none, does the applicant want to make any comment? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record and welcome.
Good evening, Mike Sue with D.R. Horton. Don't have a whole lot of comments, just glad to be here in front of you again. Things continue to move out in our Windermere or Amber Glen, depending on which side of the ledger you sit on, with names out there. So we're excited to keep moving forward and stand for any questions the council may have.
Thank you. Councilor Whiting.
What's the water pressure right underneath those houses right underneath that water tower?
Good. The water pressure is good. It's gotten better since the water tower went up. If you remember, we started out without it, and we had a little bit of struggle with irrigation, and some people had made some comments about the second-story showers not having the pressure they thought it would, but I think those have gone away. We've talked with the Shakopee Public Utility folks, and I think everybody's happy out there now.
Great. Right. Other questions of the developer, Councilor Lehman?
Mr. Mayor, there's the county's comments. It does not appear to be in a draft plan. There's a trail proposed along County Road 78. They recommend a trail construction along 78 with the development. It's not required, apparently. Is there a trail along this development on the 78?
There is a trail proposed to go along 78. It's actually in our County Road turn lane plans that we submitted separate from the development plan. So city staff is reviewing that, and we'll get comments back from them on the trail. But it is our plan to build the trail between Zumbro and Aquarius as part of this development.
Okay. And then the last comment, Mayor, is the future noise expectations on 78 as it expands and grows. I see you got a lot of trees in your plan planted here. Are these trees that are gonna, what kind of trees are they? They gonna?
There'll be a mixture of trees. There'll be some evergreen pine trees, and then there'll be some deciduous try to give us some noise attenuation, and also add some attractiveness to the roadway as they mature.
Berm on, under them trees?
There's maybe a little bit of berm, but we gotta also make sure we keep drainage flowing out of them backyards, so it's a 50-50 split on which way we go, but we work with staff and with the county staff to make sure we have drainage and as best berm or landscape buffer as we can get there.
Looks like you got a little distance between the back of the houses and the road too, so. All right, thank you.
Other questions of the developer? Other questions? If not, Mr. Sewell, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Counselor Contreras?
To make a motion to adopt resolution R 2022-096, approving the final plat of Windermere South 6th Edition.
Second that.
I have a motion and a second by Counselor Whiting for approval of this final plat. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move ahead to 10B3, the Planned Unit Development Amendment to Canterbury Southwest Planned Unit Development. Michael, welcome back.
Mayor and Council, again, the Southwest Development, we're sort of putting the last pieces together here. You'll be seeing hopefully next month another piece here, so they'll kind of close up the pie here. This is the site we're talking about tonight, right on the corner of Shenyan, Shenandoah. This is where the Armory is currently under construction. There's a proposal you'll see next month for this site. Greystone's headquarters is down here, so there really are not very many sites left here. So again, this is part of the Canterbury Southwest PUD. Each building and site requires a PUD amendment. That's why we're here tonight. They're proposing approximately 11,000 square foot building excuse me, to house a brewery, tap room, and a restaurant with 2 outdoor dining patio spaces. It's currently a 3-acre lot. Proposed final plat will create a 1.46 acre lot for this use. They're proposing a shared parking agreement with the proposed daycare across Winter Circle Drive for use on the weekends and after 6 p.m. on the weekdays. Variations from the city code, they've asked for 40 square feet of roof signage and a total of 240 square feet of original artwork. So there's murals you'll see in 4 locations, 60 square feet allowed by code. So this is the proposed site layout. So parking lot on the rear here. This is the proposed building. Shenandoah is up on the top of your screen. 2 pretty significant outdoor patios. This would be the brewery building. This is the building for the restaurant. It's really interesting. They have some good entrances off Shenandoah. The thought is we're going to have several thousand people living in this area when Triple Crown is completed. They're in their next phase. The townhouses have been selling very quickly. They're into their last phase there. There's the Armory, which is 178 units, and then there's a senior co-op, which they're in the process right now of selling those units. So there'll be a lot of people living here, and one of the constant requests has been to have walkable restaurant, dining, kind of entertainment areas. So I think this is a big step forward in that project. Here's their landscape plan. Staff is proposing a pedestrian connection here to the Shenyan. They're showing 82 parking spaces on site, 115 are required by code. They have 38 shared parking spaces at the daycare available, as I said, after 6 p.m. and on the weekends. So they have 120 spaces total, which complies with the code. As you remember, in a PUD, architecture is a really important piece. Here is the proposed building. It's a real interesting mixture of materials, some pretty large metal roofs. And then again, you can see these are the murals that will go on the building. Staff will be approving them. These are just conceptual placeholders. But again, very close to Shenandoah. It's pretty urban. Here's a big entrance, so people walking here will be able to go in. Here's one very large outdoor patio, and there's the second. And this drawing, you can see in the brewery, they've kind of expressed the way the building functions. So here's kind of the public space, the front patio, and then where the actual brewing occurs is kind of a more industrial-looking building in the back, and then this is the trash enclosure behind that. So you can see where the proposed original artwork are, the murals. There's a really interesting variety of materials. This kind of harks back to, we'll call it kind of a modern barn theme, along with some industrial look for the brew house. And again, here's the view on the east elevation. And then here is the view along Shenyan. So here's the kind of brewing area where you'd have all the tanks. Here is the trash enclosure, and here's the actual where you could go to the tap room. So pretty substantial building. We're pretty excited about the impacts. Again, the north elevation, this is, and then here's the interior. So it's kind of interesting. This is a new theme we're seeing throughout Minnesota. So the restaurant sits over here. They actually have a pass-through window. So if you're in the brewery and you want food, you can order it and then go pick it up at this window. So there's two completely separate operations, but it allows the brewery to have food in-house without having to cook in the actual brewery. So two completely separate operations, two completely separate liquor permits, but they have an open window to be able to pass food into the brewery. And in the back here is the actual brew house. And then again, this is the brewery kind of tap room area, and then this is the restaurant. So recommendation is the City Council adopt the proposed PUD amendment. The Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 5-0.
Questions of staff? Counselor Whiting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you go back to there? You can use that sign. The roof signage there, is that an accurate estimation of what that's going to look like on that roof?
They're allowed, based on this, 40 square feet, so.
Okay. And then I just want to comment on that shared parking. You know, that's fairly recent that we've put that shared parking in. And here's an example of where you don't need this big, huge acreous parking lot when you can have a great opportunity to share it. So I'm just patting myself on the back. So,
Thank you.
And Mayor, Council, I think that's a good point. So this entire site kind of has shared parking throughout. So when Greystone closes, they have a huge parking lot that other users in this area or whatever can use. You know, they talked about the Omri has all of its own parking, but they also have some surface parking in the front. So this really will act more kind of as a neighborhood than versus, you know, my parking, your parking.
Counselor Lehman.
I'm trying to find the daycare parking lot on any of these maps that they're utilizing.
Let me see if I can get to the site plan. So the daycare, Mayor and Council will be going right here. You'll be seeing that next month, and their parking lot sits right here. So it's across this private street. They, operators will be having their employees park over here on nights and weekends.
The brew operators and stuff will park over here?
The brewery employees, the restaurant employees, the goal is to get them to park over here so the better, closer parking is reserved for the people going here. The other benefit of this site is there is on-street parking in Shenandoah. It's interesting, this building is open. There's people living in this building now, and visitors are parking on the street when they go to see people at these townhomes.
Counselor Brennan.
The patio that's connected to the building, does that run along Shinyan? And does that, is there any concern with noise with the townhouses across the street?
Mayor and Council, it does. There's a leg that faces Shenyan. The rest is on Shenandoah, but this is an entertainment district. You're going to have horse racing, camel racing, I have all the other things racing going on that happens at Canterbury. You've got an amphitheater, and even with all these uses, I think the decibel level is about 60 decibels in this area, which is what street traffic is, even with the patio. There's not music or any, you know, concerts going on the patio. It's just people drinking beer.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? I guess, you know, I'm looking at it going, this is a huge win for this area as we build out that, what I call the L. You know, now they're going to have a restaurant and a tap room. We put a lot of housing in here. We have a corporate headquarters. apartment building, townhomes. Part of the concept when we're talking about parking, I really like the shared parking. However, they're trying to design this spot for the entertainment district that's walkable, right? You know, I think if you lived across the street in one of them townhomes, you're probably not gonna get in your car and drive over here unless it was raining or, you know, you'd walk over. So I think that's good. The mural and the artwork, I think, will add a splash of color that we really haven't seen a lot in our community, which will be unique. I think that gives it character on that. And again, we were just talking about the patio, and you sit outside and you got some action of the racing or a concert or, you know, I think it will bring a great vibe to this area. And that's why I called it kind of a big win for this area. Another restaurant, tap room, available for our residents and visitors.
And Mayor and Council, I'll give props to the developer. I mean, they really have worked on creating a building that's a little different. They did hire same architects we use for River City Center. Their specialty is retail, and I think they've really shown how you take two uses and kind of put them together, but still have them have their own identities.
Other questions? Other questions?
The applicant is here.
Huh?
The applicant is here.
I apologize, it's not a public hearing, but if the applicant would like to come forward? Oh, good. Counselor Brennan.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 02022-016, an ordinance of the City of Shakopee, Minnesota, amending planned unit development district number 3 in the zoning ordinance for the property located at 2801 Winter Circle Drive.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. Further discussion? Counselor Whiting.
Like the look of the barn look, I think it's a great fit, so.
Yeah, and it just, it enhances this whole build out of this Canterbury and fits the theme of entertainment, the residential, the livable area over there. I think that's fantastic.
Mayor?
Counselor Contreras.
It's not a question, just a comment. The murals, is that like a hint of who's coming in there?
It said signage, didn't it?
I know, it was, well, the mural.
Signage is coming.
I saw the colors, I'm like, is that like telling me something? Am I looking for some
No, it's not.
fusion of something?
I was too.
All right. Great. Motion on the table in a second. Further discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you very much.
All right, welcome.
I wanna know.
All in good time.
Counselor Lehman.
Motion for a short recess.
I have a motion and a second for a short recess. There would be no further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion passes. We'll stand in recess till
If you hurry,
10
you
after.
can ask them.
I'm hoping, I got a
Okay.
meeting.
We can get, reconvene the City of Shakopee City Council meeting, for July 19th, 2022. We are on 11A, which is a review of our preliminary 2023, 2027 capital improvement plan, and Nate's here to present.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. Tonight we have a workshop on a draft of the capital improvement plan. I'll go through the presentation, but Mr. Lillehag and Mr. Kursky are also here to answer any, I guess, detailed questions you have on specific projects. I did provide a draft of the capital improvement plan, about a 200-page book, so I won't be able to necessarily touch on every single detail tonight, but I'll do my best to summarize the information. I'd like to start with a little background to put things in context. Capital Improvement Plan, commonly referred to as the CIP, non-binding document of future intent of city capital projects over the next 5 years. Last year, we created a 15-year plan. We're currently updating that 15-year plan. Our intention is to get feedback on the 5-year plan, make any changes necessary, and then update the 15-year plan and bring it back to council with the adoption in September. Again, this will be as an appendix in the CIP book. The process and document itself allows the city to plan for larger and more complex projects. By design, the CIP is fluid because priorities can change drastically based on current circumstances, and ultimately the 2023 projects will be incorporated within the 2023 budget and approved with that adoption. The CIP is a prioritized list of capital projects based on estimated year needed and based on funding opportunities. We have priority definitions along with each project. Simple way to think of it is number 1 is have to do, number 2 is smart to do, and number 3 is want to do. And just here's the schedule. Again, we'll be bringing this back in September and then adopting the 2023 projects within the budget cycle. New this year, we have compiled a 20-year equipment list, which will also be included as an appendix in our CIP book. Previously, this information was contained within our AssetWorks software, but we wanted to include an all-encompassing schedule in a printed format. We do not have any equipment that has a longer useful life than 20 years. So this encompasses all city vehicles and all equipment listed out by department. And it includes the scheduled replacement dates, and for those equipments that'll be replaced multiple times in that 20-year period, that is shown as well, as along with useful lives and anticipated replacement costs. This is just a screenshot shown on the PowerPoint here. The listing is formatted to sit side by side on pages in the book, so it makes it a little bit more readable. And then on average, the annual cost over the 20-year replacement plan is $1,442,000. So that's our cost, average cost per year. Here's the total CIP expenditures by fund. Over the 5-year CIP, we've got $116 million of projects identified, $31.5 million in 2023. We did split out the Canterbury TIF District projects into a separate tax increment fund from the Capital Improvements Fund. The intention here, again, is to make things a little less confusing since the projects are funded separately out of the CIF fund. I will go through each of these funds in more detail. Funding source summary. Really just want to emphasize that not all projects are tax levy funded. And it's not even close to the primary source to fund these projects. Funding sources include park dedication fees, local, state, and federal grants, cost sharing with other local partners, franchise fees, special assessments, internal rent charges with various departments, and the utility charges for the sanitary sewer and stormwater funds. So walking through each of the funds tonight, starting with the capital projects funds, which would include the park development, capital improvement funds, the tax increment fund, and the tree replacement fund. Capital projects funds are used to keep track of funding of the cost of larger projects, and these often span more than 1 year. The Park Development Fund, which was established to fund new parks or park enhancements, is funded primarily from park dedication fees. Last year, we received $3.5 million in park dedication fees. This year, we anticipate receiving about $2.7 million for the year. We've identified over $14 million in projects in the CIP for park development. We previously had one project for the riverbank stabilization and the cultural corridor that's now split into 3 projects, with a riverbank stabilization project in the sewer fund, and then the Huber Park playground equipment and the cultural corridor projects in the park development fund. The cultural corridor is the largest project within here, and it would be contingent upon receiving outside funding. Other projects for 2023 are the Riverfront Marina Trail Wayfinding, Lions Park, Windermere Bluff Community Park, Quarry Lake, West End Dog Park, Scenic Heights Master Plan, Killarney Hills, Windermere Bluff Regional Corridor, and the Valley Crest Parks. Similar to last year, I'd like to talk, at least show the cash flow forecast for each of these funds. The forecast includes the 2021 actuals and then projections moving forward based on the CIP being presented tonight. For the current year, 2022, we've adjusted for any known project cost and revised estimates or the construction bids that we've received so far this year. The red bars represent the expenditures from year to year, and the blue line shows the cash balance in that 5-year span. At the end of 2021, the Park Development Fund had a cash balance of $4.3 million, basically as a result of the influx of park dedication funds, and we believe funding would be sufficient for all the projects scheduled through the end of next year. A number of projects do still have unknowns as far as timing and scope, which we may need to address moving forward. This particular slide shows a deficit. We don't intend to run a deficit. We'll have to modify the projects that are in here based, or funding based on, as we need to moving forward. The Capital Improvement Fund accounts for the infrastructure improvements, primarily streets. Funding is coming from the $700,000 Capital Improvement Fund levy, about $850,000 a year in franchise fees, and $1.5 million in municipal state aid construction funds. Additionally, you'll see projects funded by special assessments. In general, when you look at the cost of our annual street projects, as these costs continue to increase, the revenue sources that we have coming in aren't necessarily keeping up with these, so it's something to keep in mind as we move forward. A little over $41 million is identified in the CIP, with $8 million being in 2023. The 2023 projects include $2.58 million for reconstruction, $3 million for mill and overlays, and then smaller projects for the downtown area improvements. County Highway 16 trail extension, Whispering Oaks, County Highway 17 trail, ADA pedestrian curb ramps, annual pavement rehab, annual trail rehab, and then traffic signals at Fuller Street, and County Highway 16, 101 in Shenandoah.
Questions so far, anybody? Councilor Whiting?
I noticed on your 20-year equipment replacement schedule, you have an equipment count, and so you plan on, okay, this is gonna last 5 years, 2 years, whatever. Do you ever add any equipment to that list? Say, okay, we're gonna grow by this amount, we're gonna need another plow truck to this list?
No, and I'll tell you why. So we add new equipment, that'll show up within our operating budget. So you're aware of any equipment that we're adding to that equipment replacement schedule, and then this fund would fund the eventual replacement of it. So it would be added, not necessarily projecting out into the future. It would be, once we purchase the piece of equipment, it would then be added to the equipment replacement fund, and then we'd start accumulating enough to replace that.
One follow-up, if I could. On one of your items, you talk about 1.365, I think it was 23 for the Riverfront Marina. Is that part of the cultural corridor, or is that marina project just part of maintaining that area?
Nope, so that would be for the historic house. I can't think of the name right now, I apologize. Yeah, the Schroeder House, it would be that area down there.
Project here, okay.
Which, by the way, we will be discussing first meeting in August? Second meeting in August.
Thank you.
Councilor Lehman?
All right, Mayor, I'm on the road projects. $6 million for the 169 interchange, Marystown Road. Did we get a finalized design? Is there state aid dollars and county cost share?
Steve?
Mayor and council members, so we don't have a final design. We have a concept design. We have estimated costs, and we've applied for multiple different funding through Met Council, through MnDOT. So we're funding seeking for that. So we don't quite know the cost shares yet. I can tell you what it would be if we got funding from those different individual sources. So we're trying to package that together, and I have it in here, you know, for initial design to start in 2023 and for the project to be built in 2024. But that is fluid right now. It'll shift. Once we get funding, then we'll roll with it. But we do have enough in our CIF fund to fund the city's share with those different funding sources. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Other questions? Otherwise proceed, Nate, thanks.
Sure. Here's the funding summary. For the purpose of this comparison, we show assessments within the project. However, they're spread out over a 10-year repayment period when it comes to the purpose of cash flows, so just be aware of that difference. Here's that cash flow slide for the Capital Improvement Fund. At the end of 2021, we had a cash balance of just about $4.8 million. Our recent bond issue provided an additional $4.17 million to the CIF fund, which shows our current cash flow should be sufficient to cover current year and 2023 projects. As mentioned, we separated out the Canterbury TIF projects from the CIF fund, so it's a little easier to follow. It's now in its own separate section, which I believe is less confusing. Here's the cash flow. It's set up in a little different format because we wanted to match the Exhibit C of the developer's agreement. All of these projects will be funded through future tax increment revenues. What is shown here does not include any projects that are done by the developer. Primarily looking at the completion of County Highway 83, 12th Avenue driveway consolidation, and the Eagle Creek Boulevard Vierling roundabout remaining on the city side. And then again, not listed here is the $6.5 million in internal roadways on the east side of the development that would be completed by the developer. The tree replacement fund, financed through fees charged to developers for tree replacement. All the projects on this fund would just be contingent upon receiving funds in order to be able to complete those projects. I just wanted to mention at the end of 21, cash balance there of $76,000. Our internal service funds are funded through rent charges to various departments, provide funding for future replacement of buildings and equipment. This allows us to keep consistent expense amounts within our operations instead of large up and down swings from year to year, and then allows us to accumulate enough funds for those replacements. The first internal service fund listed here is the equipment replacement fund. Here's the equipment scheduled to be replaced in the next 5 years, a total of $7.4 million. There is one change. We do need to add the replacement of the speed trailer for 2023, which was currently not shown here. The larger purchases would include the annual replacement of police vehicles, the updating of the in-car video surveillance system, and then brine tank attachments for 8 of our plow trucks. Couldn't fit everything on one slide, so here's kind of the remainder there. The rest, or I should say the largest expenditure within the next 5 years would be the fire truck replacements. There's 3 of them scheduled for 2026. And then this shows the cash flow. Current balance of $5.7 million at the end of 2021. And then the dip there again would be the fire truck replacements in 2026. The Park Asset Fund provides the funding for the replacement of park equipment. The 2023 projects include Memorial Park, annual trail reconstruction, fence replacement, the Tapa bathrooms, Meadows Park playground equipment, and the annual parking lot rehab. A total of $852,000 in projects are scheduled for 2023. We did have a cash balance at the end of 21 at $2 million, projecting the fund to remain positive through 2027. The only other comment I would say after, kind of digging through rent charges for this year, as we've grown in new parks, the annual cost to replace those is also increasing. So that's one thing that At least the past couple of years, I've noticed a little bit of an uptick as we have to eventually plan for the replacement of those items. The Information Technology Fund pays for annual technology costs. These would include Logis hardware replacement costs, software costs, and network costs. 2023 also includes fiber redundancy improvements, server replacement, and phone system upgrades. Here's the cash flow projections, had a little over 1.1 million at the end of 2021. And then, of course, our rent charges, we set at a rate that will cover our annual costs. The 23, 24, and 25 projects are shown here for the Building Internal Service Fund. The rest are on the next slide. The Sand Venture renovation we have in an upcoming work session to further discuss preliminary designs, cost estimate, and funding options. River City Center is contingent on the acquisition of the master lease, which was presented tonight, and would be funded through tax increment revenues and lease revenue. The Innovation Center and Fire Station 1 renovation that are programmed in 24 are contingent upon successful approval of outside funding. And then 23 also includes police department boilers, the Sally Port roof maintenance project, LED lighting upgrades, and community center water heaters.
Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, did I hear that correct? 800,000 and 24 is for the police department roof and boilers? 500 Gorman Building roof replacement, BA 24-002.
This building.
Okay, so that would be, yeah, that would be Public Works.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay, thanks.
And then just the remaining years are shown here. In total, we have 26.7 million in projects identified in the Buildings Fund for the 5 years. At the end of 21, cash balance was 6.7 million. Projections show a pretty significant decrease here, which is related to Sand Venture improvements. However, funding options for this project will be provided when the design comes back to council. So right now it's shown that all funds would be coming out of the Buildings Fund. But that could include a combination of accumulated building funds, local project funds, and interfund loans.
Counselor Lehman.
Mayor, what's the status on the loan that we took out for this building? We were making payments back. Is that done, or when's that expected to be done? Mr. Reynolds might remember that.
Mr. Reynolds.
No, not off the top of my head, frankly. Yes, we did fund this building internally, but I don't have an idea. We'll have to check and see what the balance is.
I can get back to you on that, and I can provide that through Mr. Reynolds.
Shoot out an email or something. It's got to be getting toward the end of it, I think. What was the years?
I don't know. I don't want to speculate.
Yeah, I hear you.
But we'll get it for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Continue.
Then enterprise funds, so these would be your utility funds, sanitary sewer and storm drainage. They're funded through external utility charges, so the rates of these funds basically are set to fund operations and then future equipment and infrastructure needs.
Can I stop? Riverbank stabilization, is that through any kind of estimate, or is that just kind of ballparking an engineering number?
Mayor and council members, that's ballparking right now. We are currently conducting a feasibility study to identify the issues, solutions. So it's been pretty ballpark up until now. So stay tuned. A couple more months, we'll actually know better of what we will be spending the 3.5 million that we got from the government on.
Where we start and where we finish. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So sanitary sewer fund, 7.6 million in projects identified, 1.4 million in 2023. 2023 projects include the cured in place sewer pipelining, Southbridge lift station rehab, trunk sewer extensions, and then the Riverbank stabilization project. At the end of 21, we had a balance of 8.6 million in cash. However, we do anticipate that to decrease with the large projects currently underway, being the utility extension project and then the West End lift station. Based on the information I have at this point in time, we obviously have not reviewed operations thoroughly, but I do expect a rate increase for sanitary sewer, which would be consistent with what the consultant presented for the rate study at the end of last year. However, again, this would still preliminary. It'll be based on where we end up with operations. Storm drainage, a total of 3.8 million in projects have been identified, including 250,000 for 23. 23 projects include the annual storm pond improvements, drainage and flood prevention improvements, skid steer loader, and then Wynant Acres and Boiler Springs area drainage improvements. And then here's the cash flow on this slide, 11 million at the end of 2021. We are projecting to maintain a healthy cash balance over the next 5 years, and if any type of rate increases, it would just be to keep up with any increase in operational costs. So with that, any questions that you might have?
Questions?
No real easy way to go through a 210-page book.
I understand the CIP is a plan, and I get that, and I do know that some of the things that we put in the plan for next year, and they don't get done, and I understand that. A lot dependent on cost sharing, grants. I mean, this year I look at that we're proposing to do, $31 million worth of stuff. About 8.8 is either cost sharing, grants, from others, as I call it. But it doesn't really mean that all that stuff's gonna get done, right? It's all contingent on the plan and such forth. Mr. Reynolds?
Well, we do have some of it that will go forward, obviously. We have all these funds that we put in place to make sure that we have money available when we need it for equipment and other things. Our enterprise funds all take care of themselves. The big construction, non-street projects are the ones that always can shift. And I think the cultural corridor, the riverbank stabilization is probably the best example because, 2 years ago, we put it out there, we put a peg in there, and we said, it's all gonna depend if we can find the money. And so it kind of shifted, and now we have the money to do the preliminary stuff. We know we have at least 3.5. We were gonna have more from the state if they would have
Done their job?
I didn't say that. Those projects will shift, and obviously when you have a project of that magnitude, that's $3.5 million. It would have shifted if we didn't get it. It would have been bumped down the road, if you will.
Right. No, and I get that. I was trying to just doing a little exercise today. I had the last year's CIP, and I think last year for 2021 or 2022 was 27 million that we had. And then I'm trying to ask Mr. Reynolds, how much of that did we complete? And that's a tough question, right? Because some of it's over a couple of years, some got pushed, some didn't get that funding. So, we try to develop a CIP plan, and I get that, but it certainly doesn't mean necessarily that all projects will be completed.
And it's a plan, and it's fluid, because any good plan is only as good as the day today.
Right.
Tomorrow, the world could change, and guess what? Our plans are going to be different. It's much like what we talked with the county when it came to LETG.
Right.
To use your analogy during that discussion with the county, we had a #1 draft pick that didn't work out.
It didn't work out.
He blew out his knee, and now we need to find a new player, not just stay with the same draft pick. So plans are fluid. They need to be fluid, and that's, we will continue to analyze that to make adjustments when we need to.
I appreciate that. Steve, you want to follow up?
Mayor and council members, one easy example to talk about would be in the Equipment Internal Services Fund for 2022. We had over $500,000 of 2 snowplow trucks to be purchased, and that was on the state contract. We expect expected, I should say at this point, to purchase them in 2022. There's nothing available. They basically canceled our order on a state contract. We had our $500,000 order canceled because they just cannot get the vehicles. So we're not quite sure what that means to us yet. Does that mean, you know, they're not gonna honor 2022 prices? So if they cancel our order, we're gonna have to order them out of the new contract, which could be $100,000 more expensive. So, there's, you know, some of these, things in our capital improvement plan, are out of our control, and that would be a new one to us. We probably haven't, you can look back historically, and we've never had something canceled out of our, state contract for purchasing, but that's what our backs are against the wall on some of these projects, so, dynamic and fluid.
Counselor Whiting?
And another example, I think of is like the boilers that we plan to replace, but maybe the boiler doesn't go out. Do we replace it? I guess at that point, we decide if we need to replace it, but then again, it could go out a year in advance. So having those plans in place don't always work, but it's nice to have that funding there available when you need it. But that's something we could push, and I often wonder why sometimes we don't have a leaking roof. Why are we replacing the roof? But then again, once we get that leaking roof, it's gonna cost a lot more.
Cost more,
Yeah.
because you gotta pay for the Band-Aid to fix it while you gear up for the new roof. So, great comments, I appreciate that. More questions of staff? Counselor Brennan?
No.
Counselor Lehman?
Well, you know, it's a little bit deceiving when you look at the total amounts in each fund, because we know we have a lot of the dollars that we're showing are from other sources, not necessarily that fund. I've said this for years, but I know it's a placeholder, so I get it. But the average person reading it wouldn't pick that up. So we know the 12 million Innovation Center is gonna be mostly outside source dollars. We know the Culture Corridor, a lot of that is outside source dollars. And the list goes on, but it's shown here as city dollars, and that's not necessarily accurate.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, that, you know, a $31 million plan contingent on a lot of variables, of which outside sources contribute 8.8 million of that, whether that comes or doesn't, and, you know, and then, whether those projects get
And
completed or not.
I do have another comment that's a concern, the sewer fund. We looked at the years, you know, there's $1 million worth of infrastructure we're gonna put into the west end ahead of development, and you don't know when you're gonna get that dollar back. You won't until they hook up to it, okay? But I'm hearing we're gonna have to adjust rates on the current people that use services that they've paid for decades to basically fund that fund so that we can put infrastructure in the ground for somebody in the future that may or may not come. So I guess that rubs me just a little bit.
I don't know if that's necessarily accurate. So when we did our rate study at the end of last year, they looked at what our charges should be for those specific charges, for the growth charges, and making sure that those charges would then apply to the future development, and then looking at our operational charges as almost two separate things. So I think when we went, that was one of the purposes of the rate study, is to make sure that new development is paying for those infrastructure items, and that's how our rate structure is.
The dollars in the current sewer fund didn't get there from developers that ain't there yet.
Yeah, so you're pre-funding it.
You're pre-funding it
Correct.
with dollars
You're
from
right. That
existing
would be accurate.
people that use the service. And, you know, I don't know if that's.
Steve?
Mayor and council members, so, you know, built into that project funding is, yes, the sewer fund is cash flowing, the lift stations and the sewer, but that's 100% recoverable, including the interest rate. So it should be 100% recoverable from the developers directly.
providing it develops.
Yeah, from those property owners, those landowners, so it should not be on the backs of the rest of the property owners in the city.
I'd like to use that example in Rogers, Minnesota, where they did that, and it didn't develop, and they ended up taking a loss and selling the lots for $1 and all these other things. Anything can happen. Tomorrow's another day.
All right, Counselor Whiting, any further questions on the CIP?
No, I think staff has done an excellent job on even, you know, we've talked about in the past, expanding it out and adding more details. So appreciate all the work that's been put into it.
Counselor Contreras?
Thank you, Mayor, but I have no questions. Thank you, Nate, for everything.
As I go through here, there's a lot of bigger projects, but you really look at the base, and we're investing in infrastructure for the long term, or replacing something that, Lift 16, that was, we're investing in our future. Roads get so many dollars per year roughly. Same with the other infrastructure. So if there's no other questions of staff, this is just a feedback item for the CIP, and we will see this back again in a couple months.
Yep.
Nate, thanks. All right, item number 12A, city bill list in front of us. Any questions, comments on that? Councilors? All right, seeing none, our liaison report, and we'll start down here, Councilor Brennan.
Spec meeting was last night, and we took a look at the 21 year in review. And that review will be going out to all, everybody in the next few weeks. Well 23 should be completed in August. We saw that tonight when we were looking at the Windermere project. And well 23, the spec has made an agreement with D.R. Horton to use that test water to fill ponds around their area. So that's kind of interesting. I think that's all I have tonight.
Well, thank you very much. Councilor Lehman?
Thank you, Mayor. The 169 Corridor Coalition had an executive board meeting. The topic was, the county is no longer going to do the facilitation for that group. So we hired SRF, had two different proposals. The proposal is a little more in-depth than the first proposal, so that they can do like website update and these types of things too. So took that action. A lot of good dollars flow in from the lobbying efforts of that coalition for 169 projects, and the river crossing is still a priority capacity.
Your committee hired a consultant, though.
We hired a company to work directly with us that has a lot of experience in the
Right.
transportation
Yeah,
avenue in the metro area.
Right.
So we'll have one dedicated person from that organization on contract. Today we had an RTF executive meeting just on one topic only, and that was Mike Breezy, is that how you pronounce his name? The facility manager currently at the RTF. He's been trying to retire for, damn near a year now.
Right.
Finding a replacement. The replacement that the county brought forward is Chris Meyer, I believe I got the name correct. Mayor of Belle Plaine, past fire guy from Belle Plaine. They want to bring him in as an interim so that the current facility manager can show them the day-to-day operations. There's currently a study going on at the same time that the cities are participating in on what's the future of the RTF. So it's really hard to put a job description together for a full-time new person when you don't know what the end result of that study is. What does the future of that facility hold? What's it going to be used for? What's the main things that you want to accomplish going forward? From my perspective, obviously, I go back to the original mission statement, which was trying to grow the user base of it to minimize the cost to the original members, which we were. So I'm kind of curious to see how that survey / study comes out. I'm not participating in that. I assume our staffs are. I'm not up on that, but I'm curious to how that comes out, what the vision might be moving forward. Because, you know, it would be sad if the original members are asked to pay substantially more to continue being members when the original mission was to have us pay less, you know? So, they didn't necessarily make a commitment to hire this person in an interim basis until January. Although that's what was sought, I recommended that, along with others, that A, we know what kind of compensation, B, we have an idea of exactly what the expectations are, and that this person isn't necessarily assured the full-time position. They may be eligible to apply for that, but there's no guarantee that they're going to be that person, because you don't know what you're looking for until you get your survey and your study done on where we're going. So that's my update.
Well, thank you very much. We'll look for additional information coming forward on that. Counselor Whiting.
I have no liaison reports this week.
Thank you. Counselor Contreras.
Thank you, Mayor. So the end of June, the 22nd to the 24th, I attended the 3-day LMC conference. And then on the 7th, I attended the Chamber Legislative Update. And then one of my liaisons for school board, the two ex-official students were officially sworn in. And then on the 12th, I attended the Dean's Lake groundbreaking. On the 13th, I went to Rhythm of the Rails, and it was hot. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it was super hot. And then on the 15th, I attended the ribbon cutting for Jersey Mike. So welcome to Shakopee.
Wow, great. Lots of stuff. Well, there have been lots of openings here.
Yep.
So for your mayor report, I did too attend the League of Minnesota Cities Conference in Duluth. Mayor Williams and Savage won one of the most major awards from the League of Minnesota Cities on leadership. Thought that was pretty cool. Attended many seminars. I did get to attend one with Counselor Contreras and our Assistant City Administrator on PTSD, and that one stood out in my mind because of this issue is real, it's live, it's impacting people. And then the seminar talked about how it impacts municipalities, and so I found that obviously we hear about it, we know it, but then you look at how it impacts your city, so I thought that was very interesting. I too went to the Chamber Legislative Update on July 7th. We had the grand opening of Manna Brewing in the ground floor of the Deco, which we all played a big role in developing that site, and now we have a retail brew hall down there, grand opening on Monday. Also went to Mallard's, again, another redevelopment effort that we all took a big part in Mallard's Restaurant. Great. So, you know, really those two redevelopment, $52 million worth of redevelopment on two sites, 270 units, and for new residents and Vitality in our close downtown area, and then two businesses. You know, that's redevelopment 101, and I think we should all take pride in our effort for that. So you're right, coming up, Rhythm on the Rails, and then August 2nd, Night to Unite, and we will have our council meeting on Wednesday. But that is your mayor's report, and we will move forward to the administration report. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a few things, and to Councilor Lehman's point, both Chief Coleman and Chief Tate are on the RTF Future Look Committee, just to let you know that. I just wanted to throw just a thank you once again to Shakopee Public Utilities and the strong partnership. It's pretty amazing, and it's all about leadership of organizations and committing to working together, and they have been just phenomenal in some of the things that they've been able to achieve in conjunction with the city, and so my hats off continue to go to that organization and all of the great work that they're currently doing for the city as a whole. A couple of things that aren't good news, and then I'm going to have a couple things that are good news. So let's talk about not so good. We're spending money on fuel, as Nate had pointed out earlier, and I sent out earlier today the actual numbers. I've always been of the belief that it's important for us to do our jobs. There are debates in other communities that frankly aren't as financially viable as we are, where they have police sitting in parking lots waiting to be called on. I think it's important that we have a police presence in the community. This is a cost of doing business. Yes, the fuel is getting more expensive, but a couple of years ago, salt was pretty expensive, and we didn't stop salting roads. We can't stop our jobs just because we have higher fuel costs. Now, I will say, even with that higher fuel costs, we are actually trending below our overall budget for the year. So I fully expect at the end of the year, if we do have to make an adjustment, we won't have to go into reserves. We won't have to do anything other than basically make some changes internally to this year's budget. So that's fuel. THC. When I was in the Senate, we always wondered about the unintended consequences of our actions. When you write legislation, you sometimes don't understand what you're doing until later. We always had unintended consequences. The actions of the state in legalizing essentially THC in small edibles, has kind of put communities on their heels a little bit. Because one, we had no idea this was going to happen. We certainly have been studying for years the concept of legalization of marijuana as a whole, but this came out of the blue. And I was actually on a meeting this morning with the author of the legislation who believed that she was correcting something, and that's clearly not what happened. Her concern was that these things were already in communities and that she was trying to limit the amount, and that they were being illegally sold, and she was trying to limit that. My comment to that was, well, if they're being illegally sold, you go with education and enforcement, not necessarily making them legal. All that aside, cities, and there is no consensus on this, cities right now are trying to figure out what to do. Do we license it? Do we wait to see what the state is going to do? The state is currently working on legislation to try to clarify this issue for cities. Or do we enact moratoriums and wait and keep things off the street until we can figure out what's the end state for the state legislation itself? I am a fan of moratorium. Prior Lake will be discussing a moratorium tonight, maybe tonight. Next week? Last night. They will be going ahead with a moratorium based upon what their manager said this morning in the meeting. I believe it's something we should do. As I made my argument, we do not know what the end state is going to be at this point. We do not know what the state is going to do at this point. So from my perspective, as opposed to doing something that might be counteracted by the state, might put us in a bad situation if the state decides to go in another direction, we should just take a pause. And we should simply say that we're not going to allow this in the city for a year until we can figure out what's going to happen. And specifically, a lot of that would have to deal with the zoning code, because we've got to figure out, if we were going to allow it, where we could put it. So it's my intent to bring forward for discussion a moratorium at the next meeting Stillwater has also went forward with a moratorium. They actually did that back in November for other reasons. But our city attorney and their people are currently looking at what would be a good moratorium for cities in general, and then of course we will take a look at that and determine what would be good for us as a whole. So I've been working on this now for a couple weeks, trying to get some idea what we should do and where we're going. And my meeting today, I talked to Chelsea right after the meeting and just basically kind of threw up my hands. I'm like, nobody knows anything right now. And we don't know where we're headed. Bloomington favors licensing. I believe Minnetonka is going to favor licensing. I think Edina was going to go for a moratorium. So you've quite literally got it across the board as to what different communities are going to do. So that's THC. Any questions about that?
No, but I attended the county commissioner meeting today, and they're also discussing it. I don't know if they're talking about it for the townships and that type of thing, or if they're talking about it countywide. I really don't know, so.
We don't happen to know the state statute, do we?
Yeah, I've got the state statute, and I've actually got some other background information that I'll send out to all of you tomorrow. Actually, just got some of it today, and it's going to be fluid. It's clear that things are changing daily as people get more information, but I will definitely get that out to you. Vandalism, vandalism, vandalism. Lori, can you do me a favor and put this on the document camera? So, Southbridge Dog Park, great park, great restroom facility, just a great, like all of our parks, they're really good. And so obviously we've had some vandalism there and with taggings, and now we have something even worse, and so the restroom is currently closed, and you'll see why in a few seconds here. This is a photo of a toilet that's literally been broken into pieces. Now these toilets, it takes a lot to do that. But you can see it's not so nice anymore. Well, obviously people that need to use the restroom aren't going to be able to do that at this point. This has to be fixed. This is going to cost money, clearly. And it's just ridiculous. You can see on the walls the remains of the spray cans from where we had to clean that up last time. And, ladies and gentlemen of Shakopee, this is your tax dollars, and this does not need to happen.
This is your tax dollars being wasted.
Absolutely being wasted. And what's even worse is that if you have a small child and they need to go to the bathroom, at the dog park, well, guess what? I don't have a bathroom for you right now. So we're continuing to address these issues. The police department has been working hard and has some leads on some of the other miscreants. And hopefully we'll have more information about that in the future, but there you go. Not so good.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, you have more? Yes, no. I just want to say that, the graffiti a month ago and a couple rounds of that, and I heard we have some good IDs on those folks, but then this, and and you're right, it turns around and then we already paid for this stuff, and then we got to clean it up, we got to fix it, more tax dollars, and now inconvenience. So here's where an action, and then it's an inconvenience for those users that want to use it over the next week or so until we get it fixed. Very sad. I want to think better of our community. We have a great community, and this is done by a very small percentage of it, but it's still, it takes one or two people like this to impact a lot, right? And it's sad, it's frustrating, and it hurts. So thank you.
All right. We're going to end with good news. Just before the meeting, we found out that we are receiving the Voice of the People Award from the International City County Management Association.
Nominated.
What's that?
Nominated.
For the Voice of the People Award for the International City County Management Association in 2 areas. The first being equity, inclusion, and engagement, and the second being safety. And this is a national award that honors local government based upon the feedback from their residents. And, you know, we do annual surveys, or every other year, we do surveys. And the National Community Survey, and we do that, and we're ranked with other communities. And that's pretty cool. Once again, the city of Shakopee. And what great areas? Safety, equity, inclusion, and engagement. 2 great areas.
Very good areas. Well, we're nominated. Let's see.
Win it.
Anything else, Mr. Reynolds?
I think I'm done.
Excellent. And great report. Let's move ahead then to item number 13. Is there any other business before this council? Any other business? Otherwise, Counselor Whiting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to Wednesday, August 3rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. 2022, sorry, at 7 p.m.
A second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Further discussion? Further discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion carries. We are adjourned at 10 p.m. Thank you all.